Chapter 489. The Ministry of Official Personnel Affairs of the Imperial Court has a rule every year that the salary of the officials is determined according to their official position. Beligaju said with a faint smile, but no one could feel the warmth in his voice. Magistrate Liao, you are just a small magistrate. How can you let your son wear a brocade coat that costs more than 100 taels? Magistrate Liao's fingers paused and he wanted to put on airs. Private Advisor Long, I am talking to Chen Xiaoya, not you. What do you think this is? Answer my question. Bailey Jiaoju's voice was cold and hard as he interrupted his words. His pair of eyes emitted a chill that could almost freeze a person's skin. At that moment, Magistrate Liao felt a fear that he had never felt before. Governor Chen observed Beligaju's expression. He finally had an accurate guess. His Highness did not want to reveal his identity, so he had to control his emotions. It was important to guess the thoughts of the superior. Governor Chen tried his best to act natural in front of Beligaju. At least, he did not want to reveal anything. Liao, do you know who you are talking to? Chen Liang could not hold back anymore. He wanted to lift Magistrate Liao up. Governor Chen pulled him back and said calmly, Lord Liao, in the Imperial Court, when the advisor asks questions, it's best that you answer in full detail. Magistrate Liao had to give an explanation since the governor of 3 provinces asked him personally. He tried his best to put on a smile on his face. Magistrate Chen, you know that I am not talented. I like to do business to support my family. Moreover, this child's uncle has always doted on him, so he sends all the good things to him. He pushed all the things related to him away with just one sentence. Bailey Jiaoju curled his thin lips and said, Magistrate Liao said that it was a gift, but according to my investigation, Magistrate Liao sent the disaster relief funds to his private account on the first day after he received them from Fuping County. The clothes that Master Liao is wearing right now were also bought with those silvers. How can this be considered a gift? What disaster relief funds? I don't know what you are talking about. When Magistrate Liao said this, it was obvious that he was guilty. His eyes darted left and right, but his heart was filled with shock. He thought that he had done it secretly, but how did the other party find out? Beligaju smiled. You don't know? It seems that Magistrate Liao wants me to help you remember. Although there was a smile on his lips, his expression was so cold that it made Magistrate Liao feel uneasy. Governor Chen turned his head to look at him. His eyes were filled with anger. Disaster relief funds. You touched the disaster relief funds. If Governor Chen felt that this Liao guy was just acting recklessly earlier, he now felt that this man deserved to die. Is there still any law in your eyes? Governor Chen was born as a general. In order not to cause trouble for the retired emperor, he had already trained his temper to be very good. Now, when he heard that Magistrate Liao was even greedy for the disaster relief funds, he was immediately enraged. He lifted his foot and kicked Magistrate Liao. Magistrate Liao was caught off guard. The pain in his left leg made him kneel on the ground. Master Liao extended his arms and stood in front of Magistrate Liao. He said to Governor Chen, Lord Chen, let's talk things over, let's talk things over. Talk things over, my foot. Chen Liang said, when we were in the provincial capital, you were the one who bumped into our boss. You even apologized to him on the spot. Now that we are in Fuping County, you are accusing our boss. Both Liao family's father and son are the same. Both of you are pests who harm the people. Beating you up is considered a light punishment. You are full of lies and hypocrite. The crowd was furious when they heard what he said. You want a reward after bumping into someone? This is the first time I've seen such a shameless person. It's all because Lord Wei is clean and has no background. He is easy to bully. Look at those officials from the provincial capital. They are protecting Master Liao so well. They are obviously working together to frame Lord Wei and put him in prison. These people can actually become the parental officials. Is the heavens blind? Good people are killed because of them. We must give Lord Wei an explanation for this. That's right. We must give Lord Wei an explanation. Inspector Governor. Liu Yin spoke from the crowd. I heard that you were ordered by the retired emperor to seek justice for the people. Now, not only are there people who are taking bribes and bending the law, They even want to murder an honest official. There are so many of them. Do you know how to deal with them? Do you think you can give us an explanation? Not only did the Liao family's father and son turn pale, but the 4 officials from the provincial capital also turned pale when they heard what she said. They tried to explain themselves in a panic. Lord Chen. They thought that even though Lord Chen was the inspector governor of 3 provinces, he could not punish all of them at once. He had to weigh the various positions of the officials. If he went overboard, the higher-ups would definitely be dissatisfied. However, they did not expect him to arrest all of them with a single order. Inspector Governor Chen, aren't you afraid of falling out with us? One of the officials shouted in a low voice, how can you arrest us so brazenly? The elders won't agree to it. However, what the officials did not expect was that this time, Inspector Governor Chen did not even care about the elders. He only said 3 simple words, arrest them. At that moment, all the officials were more or less dumbfounded. Even the elder's name was no longer useful. Who exactly gave Inspector Governor Chen such great support? The officials could not figure it out. Young Master Liao, on the other hand, simply turned hostile. Chen, I'm flattering you so humbly because I'm giving you face. How dare you lock me up? Just you wait. They had never seen such an arrogant person. Almost all the people heard young Master Liao's threat at the end. Magistrate Liao was the calmest among them. The moment his hands were handcuffed, he still had his own plan in mind. As long as they didn't commit the crime of murder, the higher-ups wouldn't just watch them die like this. It would be the same even if the other party was the inspector governor of 3 provinces. No matter how powerful the inspector governor of 3 provinces was, could he be more powerful than the 4 great elders in the capital city? Wei was only relying on Chen's support. When they were sent to the capital, there would still be room for negotiation. When the time came, he would like to see who would be the real winner. The other 4 officials thought so too. That was why when they entered the prison, they began to remotely command their subordinates to carry out various activities. They asked them to send the money that should be sent, so that they could teach Hellion Vivian and the rest a lesson when they returned to the capital. Chapter 490. At this moment, the news of Hellion Vivian getting rid of evil for the people and benefiting Fuping had spread among the villagers. The people felt satisfied. They pulled up banners in the fields and hung them one after another. All of them showed the people's gratitude to Hellion Vivian. When Governor Chen saw the water pump by the river, he was very excited. He accidentally called out Hellion Vivian's real name, Princess Consort. If the retired emperor saw this scene, he would definitely thank you on behalf of the entire War Dragon Empire's citizens. There were many mountainous regions that couldn't withstand the summer drought because of the water shortage. Every year at this time, just within the provincial capital, there would be many villagers queuing up to receive grain from the warehouse. In the future, with this thing made by Princess Consort, the people won't have to worry about water anymore. Bang! The watermelon that Liu Rin was carrying fell to the ground heavily. It broke into 5 or 6 pieces and interrupted the conversation between Governor Chen and Hellion Vivian. Hellion Vivian turned around and looked at her. She was still wearing a plain white robe, but the corners of her eyes were slightly raised. What's wrong? Lord Chen, he just called you Princess Consort? Liu Rin started to doubt if there was something wrong with her ears. Unexpectedly, Hellion Vivian blinked her eyes and admitted frankly, I forgot to tell you, I'm actually a woman. No, it's not a matter of gender, it's Princess Consort. Liu Rin was so excited that she immediately knelt on the ground. I didn't know that Princess Consort. Hellion Vivian put her finger in between her thin lips and pulled her up. I deliberately disguised myself this time because I don't want people to know. Liu Rin was still a little confused, but she was smart enough to keep quiet at this time. No wonder Governor Chen didn't feel like he was in a high position when he faced Lord Wei. Instead, he was extremely polite. It turned out that Lord Wei had such a strong background. According to this deduction, Lord Wei had a strong background. Then, wouldn't Private Advisor Long, who made Governor Chen follow him willingly, have a stronger background? Someone who had more power than the current Princess Consort, wouldn't that be? Liu Yin was shocked and did not continue thinking about it. On the other side, Belagaju reached out and saved the carrier pigeon from the little one. Looking at the note that he plucked from the pigeon, his eyes slowly turned cold. What's wrong? Hellion Vivian naturally saw his emotional fluctuations. Belagaju handed over the note in his hand and said indifferently, "The snake has begun to enter the cave. We should also move." Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows and looked at the contents of the note. The corners of her mouth faintly carried a mocking smile. These officials were really dishonest. Even after entering prison, they still had so many disobedient thoughts. Could it be that they didn't know that as an official, the more important it was at this time, the more they should cut off contact with the people above them? If that was the case, there might still be a chance of survival. However, they had chosen the most foolish way to ask for help from the higher-ups. This was no different from courting death. Hellion Vivian curved her thin lips. "Have you made the arrangements in Fuping County?" "Yes, the biggest problem in Fuping County is the drought. Now that this problem has been solved, the real county magistrate will be here in 3 days. You don't have to worry, the new county magistrate is one of my people. He will do everything well." Belagaju's voice was as noble as usual. It always had the power to convince people. Hellion Vivian thought about it and also felt that it was time to move up. Although Fuping County was good, there were more important things in the capital city that she needed to do. It had been 5 days since Belagaju and Hellion Vivian left the palace. During these 5 days, the stewards of the Hellion family had openly and secretly taken away a lot of the wealth that originally belonged to the Hellion clan. Some of them were very careful. Some people were brazenly planning to wait until a few days later to discuss and directly vote Hellion Wei out of the competition. They thought that Hellion Vivian would not have any chance of winning the title, but they did not know that the name official Wei Qing had already spread to the neighboring provincial cities that were only a hillside away from the capital city. Hellion Vivian had a lot of things to do before she left, so she summoned the 2 county magistrates who were left after the corruption crackdown and told them that she was leaving. The 2 county magistrates originally thought that Fuping County had a good official and that they would finally have peace. Who would have thought that they would receive such a piece of news? Is it because those people are too powerful? Has Lord Wei's official career been affected? One of the county magistrates asked worriedly. Hellion Vivian smiled and shook her head. "Instead of being affected, it's better to say that I'm being promoted. I'm going to be transferred to the higher-ups." So soon. The county magistrates could not believe it. Lord Wei had only been in Fuping County for a few days. Was she going to be promoted again? This did not make sense, did it not? No matter how good she was, someone would have to report it to the higher-up. Hellion Vivian realized that she could not fool them, so she simply said, "I used some connections from my family." The county magistrates were shocked when they heard that. They had always thought that Lord Wei did not have any background. After all, Magistrate Liao had already investigated everything that he could. If Lord Wei really had a background, it was impossible that Magistrate Liao did not find out. Moreover, judging from the behavior of the officials from the provincial cities, they did not have any scruples and were obviously trying to pull Lord Wei down. All of these indicated that Lord Wei was a person with no background. But now, Lord Wei actually told them personally that he used some connections from his family. What kind of connections did his family have that allowed him to be promoted from a lowly county magistrate to the top? Not to mention that it only took him 6 days. Even Magistrate Liao, who had such a huge network in the capital city, did not find out Lord Wei's true identity. Lord Wei must have lied to them because he did not want them to worry. The county magistrates looked at each other and looked at Hellion Vivian with hesitation. "Lord Wei, if you have any difficulties, you can tell us." Hellion Vivian knew that they were wrong when she heard what they said. However, this mistake saved her the trouble of explaining further. She smiled and nodded. Then, she told the 2 county magistrates about how the neighboring counties should develop together. The 2 county magistrates listened attentively, as if they were learning from her rare experience. When the water pump was developed, these people were completely convinced by Hellion Vivian, not to mention the things that she was imparting to them now. Of course, it was more useful. Hellion Vivian did not tell anyone when she left. Governor Chen left a day earlier than them because he had to escort the ministers to the prison for trial. Chapter 491. Belagaju had chosen to set off in the wee hours of the morning. The sky had just turned bright. Hellion Vivian was still yawning, her pair of beautiful eyes drooping. She only wanted to continue sleeping in the carriage. Little Seventh Prince, on the other hand, was very energetic. He carried 3 people's luggage and carried it with one hand. He did not forget to bite on his beloved meat bun. The shadow guards stood behind him and looked at each other, feeling very conflicted. Seventh Prince had done their jobs, what were they going to do? Little Seventh Prince did not realize that he had destroyed the shadow guard's rice bowl. He used his short legs to jump onto the back of the horse. His small handsome face was cool. He was still wearing the robe that he wore when he came, but it was much cleaner than before. His temperament and appearance were all revealed at this moment, very domineering. Belagaju was the most leisurely. He was the last one to get on the carriage. Then, he ordered in a faint voice, "Set off." Hellion Vivian yawned. She was a little more awake than the cold aura of the man. Why is little Seventh not coming in? He is not that stupid to be our third wheel at this time. Belagaju reached out and pulled her over. Hellion Vivian did not move at all. She felt a numbing sensation on her thin lips. The tip of his tongue was slightly cold with the smell of mint. He patiently guided her, but in the next moment, it became incomparably intense. She was carried up by Belagaju and placed on the black carpet. His palms moved around her body and stroked her back forcefully, lifting her up. The tip of his tongue moved even more wantonly. Hellion Vivian knew that he was using this method to tell her that he would do anything to have her. Hellion Vivian thought of the burning sensation on her back when she woke up in the morning. Suddenly, she could not control her heartbeat. With one hand on Belagaju's chest, her voice was a little breathless. "Hey, if you want to be intimate, you have to look at the situation first, right? This situation is not good." Belagaju touched her waist evilly. "No one will disturb you. Don't you like to sleep in the carriage?" The sleep she liked was clearly a name, so why did it become a verb when it came out of his mouth? Hellion Vivian's lips were bright, and her eyes were clear. She pushed him away firmly. Belagaju did not force her. He had always liked to throw himself into someone else's arms. "I haven't had breakfast yet. I'm a little hungry. Why aren't you eating breakfast again?" When Hellion Vivian heard this, she immediately turned around and began to rummage through the snacks hidden in the carriage. Then, she took a piece and gave it to Belagaju. Bailey Bijouer smiled and opened his thin lips. Not only did he bite the pastry, but he also sucked on Hellion Vivian's fingertips. Hellion Vivian could clearly feel the slight coolness sliding through her fingertips, and her face was slightly red from the heat. Belagaju hugged her from behind. His eyes were like the stars and the moon, and it was easy for people to fall into them. "These snacks are too sweet." Hellion Vivian did not argue with him about these things. Anyway, she had already seen a certain prince's unknown arrogance. She directly fed the Osmanthus cake in her hand into his mouth. When she fed him, he would frown and eat a few mouthfuls. But it was only a matter of a few mouthfuls. Hellion Vivian did not want to let him eat a lot. She casually put the remaining half of the pastry into her mouth. While chewing, she said, "If you want to eat some snacks to fill your stomach, I'll feed you something else when we enter the provincial capital later." Belagaju looked at her small face filled with pastries and looked concerned about him. He chuckled in a low voice. "Why do you eat everything? Is it my fault?" Hellion Vivian swallowed the pastry. The corners of her mouth twitched slightly as she glanced at him. She silently complained in her heart. When other people were in a relationship, it was the girlfriend who did not finish the food for the boyfriend to eat. Why was it the other way around when it came to her? If she continued to eat like this, she would definitely be worried about her future weight. Hellion Vivian reached out and pinched her face. She felt a little sad. Belagaju naturally saw her actions and pinched her face. "Millimeter, it's not enough." "What's not enough?" Hellion Vivian's eyes were slightly dazed. Belagaju looked at her with a faint smile. "The feel of your hand. Don't you know that your husband likes to pinch meaty things?" Hellion Vivian chuckled. "So, you want to raise me into a pig for your own preferences, right?" She had to admit that a certain prince was too sinister. "So, Don't let me see you eat less, okay? Threatening her? Helene Vivian rolled her eyes. She was directly pulled into his arms. While she smelled the scent of sandalwood, he rested his face on her shoulder and his thin lips landed behind her ear. Instead of thinking about those useless things, it's better to take care of your body. Yes. Helene Wei's lips curved into a smile. Was it an illusion? Why did she feel that a certain prince was very concerned about whether this body was good or bad? Helene Vivian playfully took his hand and placed it in her palm. Then, she interlocked their fingers and enjoyed the quiet intimacy. The carriage traveled on the mountain roads of Fuping County. The fields that were irrigated by the river had already sprouted emerald green seedlings, which looked very pleasing to the eye. The transformation of the land always made people feel relaxed and happy. The air was filled with the pleasant smell of water. Everything seemed very beautiful. At this moment, the carriage suddenly came to a stop. Helene Vivian and Beligaju looked at each other and stretched out their hands to lift the curtain of the carriage. In the fields in front of the carriage, there were countless people standing orderly. They were even afraid of blocking Helene Vivian's footsteps, so they chose to stand quietly and silently send off their hero, Lord Wei, in their hearts. These people were all farmers. Perhaps, they were often called stupid by others. There were also many scumbags among them who were greedy for money. However, most of them lived in the poorest areas, but there were still people who were kind. Sometimes, what they wanted was very simple, which was to have enough to eat, wear, and be treated fairly. However, there were very few people who would stand up and do something for them. Now, Helene Vivian was here in the form of Lord Wei. When she arrived, there was no trace of her, but when she left, so many people were reluctant to let her go. Helene Vivian watched this scene quietly. Her eyes were filled with astonishment and gratitude. Little Seventh Prince was riding in front of the carriage. He turned his head and asked Helene Vivian softly, "Third sister-in-law, do you want to get off the carriage?" "No." Helene Vivian retracted her gaze. There was a deeper tone in her voice that was not there before. "Let's continue forward." "Okay." Little Seventh Prince led the way in a dignified manner. Helene Vivian let out a long sigh. When she changed her identity in the future, she could still come to Fuping County and open an orchard or something. At that time, would they be able to accept the fact that Lord Wei was actually a woman? Chapter 492. Third Elder Brother, are we going back to the capital city directly? The little Seventh Prince looked back with a meat bun in his mouth when no one was around. Beligaju supported his face with his slender fingers. He seemed to be thinking about something. "We still have a lot of time. Let's go to the provincial capital first." Provincial capital? Helene Vivian was intrigued. "What identity are we using this time?" Beligaju smiled mischievously. "Lord Wei has done so many good deeds for the people. It's normal for him to be promoted as the prefect of the provincial capital." The little Seventh Prince looked at his third elder brother's smile and felt his scalp go numb. But there should be a lot of good food in the provincial capital. The little Seventh Prince's expression became very serious when he thought of this. He looked very reliable with a serious expression on his little tiger face and his eyes looking straight ahead. The shadows looked at each other. Why is the Seventh Prince so serious all of a sudden? Maybe he's moved by the people. One of the shadows sniffled. "Our little master has finally grown up." It was undeniable that there was always a gap between imagination and reality. This was because the little one's next sentence was, "Go ahead and ask around in the provincial capital. I want to know which restaurant has good food." The shadow's mouths twitched. He had been racking his brains just now, and this was what he was thinking about. Helene Vivian listened to the conversation outside and chuckled softly. She thought about the little one's request along the way and found a restaurant that looked good. The temperature in the provincial capital was good. It was close to the sea to the west and the capital city was only half a day's journey away from the east. Therefore, it was obvious that this was a rich place. Although it was not very far from the poor Fuping County, there was a world of difference. There were many sea creatures in the restaurant, but it was nothing strange to Helene Vivian. After all, there were some things that the people dared not eat in the War Dragon Empire. It was good enough to catch a few sea crabs and lobsters. The little seventh prince was very interested. He licked his thin lips with his tongue. Since he was not tall enough, he had to stand on his tiptoes to look at the food. An extra serious expression appeared on his cool little face. After reading it, he turned to look at his third brother. Hellion Vivian was willing to bet that if it wasn't for Beligaju, little Seven would have jumped into the fish tank and caught it alive. At this moment, someone suddenly said, "A lobster and a crab." Hellion Wei turned her head and discovered that the waiter was standing behind them. But they hadn't even ordered yet. Why did he start to remember? Hellion Vivian frowned. "We haven't decided what to eat yet. Sir, don't joke around. You've been here for a long time. That young master even pointed at our fish tank. Isn't it done?" The waiter recorded the bill and said with a smile, "Sir, don't worry. Our kitchen has already recorded what you've seen and is preparing it now. It will be ready soon. You should find a place to sit down first." Little seventh prince looked at him fiercely. "I was just pointing. I didn't ask anyone to serve the dishes." "Young master." The waiter closed the menu in his hand. His attitude was not as gentle as before. "Let me give you a piece of advice. In Bayview Restaurant, you have to order when you point. If you don't order, why did you point at it?" It was the first time the little one heard such a bandit's logic. He glanced at his third brother with his round eyes. Beligaju's expression was very indifferent. The corners of his mouth were slightly curved. He looked harmless, but those who were familiar with him knew that this was a sign that he was displeased. Hellion Vivian narrowed her eyes and looked at the waiter who was holding his chin up arrogantly. "Aren't you afraid that someone will punish you for tricking people like this?" "Hey, I say, this guest, what are you talking about? What do you mean by tricking people? We're doing business here. It's normal for us to serve the dishes you pointed at. Besides, open your eyes and take a good look. What kind of place is this? This is the provincial capital. If the retired emperor wants to eat seafood, he has to fish it from us and bring it to the palace. Do you understand?" Speaking of this, the waiter sneered. "Also, sir, don't mind my words. I'm warning you, don't look for trouble in Bayview Restaurant. In the end, you'll be the one who will suffer." Little seventh prince's eyes were completely cold. His clothes were fluttering in the wind. In just a moment, his martial strength reached 100%. The shadows reached out their hands and covered their faces. This waiter was definitely dead. However, what they did not expect was that the seventh prince, who had always advocated violence, did not beat the waiter up. Instead, he heaved a long sigh and hugged Hellion Vivian's waist. "We won't eat here anymore." "Why not? We've already ordered the dishes." Hellion Vivian's eyes were cold. She put her hand on the little one's head. "Even if we've spent the money, we should try the seafood here to see how special it is." Little seventh prince lowered his voice. "Grandpa doesn't like seafood. His whole body will itch after eating the prawns. These things in the palace are all for me to eat. I won't eat seafood anymore. Let them be so smug. Good boy, we'll still eat seafood." Hellion Vivian rubbed the little one's head again. "They're not smug because you don't like seafood. Even if you don't like seafood, they can make up other reasons. Didn't they just use the retired emperor as an excuse? It's time for Bayview Restaurant to be cleaned up. She could beat him up. However, first of all, she would not beat him up thoroughly. Second of all, everyone knew that she did not like to use violence. If she could use a more civilized way to crush the person who supported Bayview Restaurant, she would be more than happy to do so. Hellion Vivian smiled. She brought the little one to sit at the octagonal table. Just then, the dishes were served. However, the lobster on the plate was more than twice the size of the one they saw in the tank just now. The crab was pathetically thin. It did not look like a sea crab at all. Instead, it looked more like a small river crab. Hellion Vivian lowered her eyes and glanced at the price, 50 taels of silver. Hellion Wei smiled coldly. This was really no different from robbing money. This kind of seafood was only worth 5 taels of silver at most. Not to mention, the other smell on the lobster was obvious. It was not made of living things, but dead things. This prawn is totally different from the one we saw just now. Little Seventh Prince was angry. Where was the lobster? There were also some people who encountered the same problem as Hellion Wei Wei and the rest. That was 2 businessmen from other places. Originally, they just wanted to see how the seafood in this coastal provincial capital was like and whether they could transport it back to their hometown. They did not expect that their meal would be such a scam. Chapter 493. Hellion Vivian had observed that none of the people eating here were locals. Most of them were foreigners. While they were eating, 3 or 4 people came and wanted to smash the restaurant in front of the waiter. However, the merchants all believed in one principle, and that was, if they went out, they would try their best not to cause any trouble if they could. Although they were angry, they had to finish the dishes they ordered. Otherwise, it would be a waste of money. It was not worth it. Selling seafood like this is daylight robbery. Someone cursed in a low voice, just like what they said, I shouldn't have come to the provincial capital. Hellion Vivian's eyes moved slightly and laughed. This big brother, do you know something? That person saw that they were also victims, so he cried and laughed, I don't know anything. Before I came, I saw a few merchants who wanted to come to the provincial capital to buy seafood. Those people reminded me that the water in the provincial capital is too deep and there are many scammers. It's better not to come here. I thought that since this is the coastal area closest to the capital, how much scammers can they scam us? The palace is just over a mountain, so they can't go too far. But who would have thought that we were just standing at the door and looking at the fish tank and were forced to order so many dishes? Every dish here is so expensive. You saw it too. They charged us more than 40 taels for just a few small shrimps. We only brought 100 taels with us. This is just the beginning, because we spent more than half of our money on just one meal. It's a scam. Is there no one above to take care of this? Hellion Vivian asked. That person shook his head. How can this be taken care of? There must be someone behind this who dares to open a restaurant like this. Before I came, I heard some news and thought that I wouldn't be scammed. I was careful in everything and asked for the price of every dish in advance. Who would have thought that the dishes were not what I saw? Alright, let's not talk about it anymore. We can't afford the seafood anymore. Let's go back. Another person stood up with a dispirited expression on his face. That person said to Hellion Wei Wei, Brother, we'll take our leave first. Seeing that you're still young, I'll leave you with a word of advice. Don't stay in the provincial capital for too long, and don't get into any conflicts with them. I saw the people from the Yamen coming over last time, and they were very respectful to the boss here. Perhaps they were the ones who pulled all the strings here. If you can leave, try to leave as soon as possible. So that's how it is. Hellion Vivian played with the teacup in her hand. Big brother, if you trust me, you can leave 2 days later and find an inn in the provincial capital to stay. I promise that in less than 2 days, your seafood business will be doing well. When the man heard Hellion Vivian's reply, he was dumbfounded. Here are 40 taels of silver. Hellion Vivian reached out and took out a piece of paper from her long sleeve. This money is enough for you to stay in the provincial capital for 2 days. When the man saw the logo on the money, his eyes suddenly changed. You're profound. Hellion Wei Wei nodded her head, still smiling. The man suddenly felt that the money in his hand was too heavy. As a businessman, the most important thing was to make more money. Almost all businessmen knew that instead of saying that Profound Heavens had successfully crushed many armament stores, it was better to say that it was a store that every businessman wanted to open. As long as there was a place with a lot of people, Profound Heavens would definitely appear. Moreover, the armament stores inside were highly sought after. To be able to reach this point, they simply couldn't imagine how powerful the people inside were, let alone seeing the internal staff inside. Then what are you in charge of in Profound Heaven? The man's eyes lit up. He wanted to sit down and continue to chat with Hellion Vivian. Can I meet your boss? The other man was also excited, but he still retained some sense. He's so young, how can he be qualified to meet the boss? That's true. The man sighed in disappointment. Hellion Vivian touched the bridge of her nose. It was really hard to say. In fact, She was the boss. Since the little brother from profound heaven gave us this sentence, then we'll wait. That person returned the banknotes, but there's no need for these banknotes. We are doing business, and we learn from our mistakes. Today's matter will be a lesson learned. But you, little brother, should be more cautious. Helene Vivian nodded and watched the two businessmen leave the restaurant. Her eyes revealed a trace of coldness. This group of people really know how to play. In fact, if it was any other time, Helene Vivian wouldn't be so angry. This time, it was because the other party had hurt Xiao Qi. Their Xiao Qi was such a simple foodie. Although he had perfectly inherited the unique black-bellied royal family's characteristic, he was still a child. The rules of the adults were enough to make people feel disgusted. Now, they even used the fact that the higher-ups liked to eat seafood to make money in the provincial capital. Oh, did they really think that no one would dare to touch them? Go and tell Governor Chen to gather all the officials in the provincial capital. Just say that there's a new official in the provincial capital. Beligaju, who hadn't spoken a word from beginning to end, put down the bamboo chopsticks in his hand. Every movement of his carried an extraordinary elegance. As he spoke, he met the little one's round eyes. How many times have I told you, if you meet someone who bullies you, what should you do? Beat them back. Little seventh prince said very domineeringly. The shadows trembled. Here it comes again. Master's incorrect teaching method. Your Highness, please don't say any more. If you continue, when the seventh prince beats someone up, the retired emperor will punish them in the end. The shadows looked at Beligaju with tears in their eyes. They hoped that His Highness would be merciful this time. However, they still underestimated Beligaju's way of doing things. That's in the palace. Beligaju took a sip of tea leisurely. Now that we're outside the palace, you have to understand how to make the person who bullied you regret it to their intestines. That's the best way to vent your anger. But beating people up won't solve the problem. Third brother, you mean to say that we can't just beat them up? We have to destroy them mentally, right? The little one's eyes became brighter and brighter as he listened. The shadows were speechless. Helene Vivian was speechless. If you're not afraid of a tiger eating people, then a man-eating tiger should have a mind of its own. Is he trying to educate Little Seven so that he'll surpass his master? Little Seven is quite pitiful to meet such a troublesome third brother. Little Bald Head didn't feel pitiful at all. He said coldly, how dare he use Imperial Grandfather's name to do bad things? I must destroy him. Chapter 494. Millimeter. Beligaju picked up the bamboo chopsticks and casually picked up a prawn for him. Eat up. After that, you can go back to the palace. Little seventh prince's tiger-like eyes widened. Third brother, I don't want to go back to the palace. Why do you want me to go back to the palace? When you go back, you can just say that you got a stomachache from eating prawns. Beligaju reached out to help the little one tidy up his clothes. The shadows were still thinking about it. Little seventh prince had never been sick since he was born, except for the one time when he was held by the royal for a night when he had a fever. Moreover, the seventh prince had no problem eating raw dragon meat and demon beast. How could a prawn give him a stomachache? While these questions were being asked, the little one had completely understood his third brother's meaning. He immediately straightened his back and said with a cool expression, then I have to act more realistic. Third brother, you have to send an imperial physician to go back with me. I will also ask my little shadows to copy the name of this restaurant for me, so that I don't remember it wrongly. Go. Beligaju retracted his hand, a faint smile on his handsome side profile. The little one nodded solemnly. He could not even walk properly, but he had a superb lightness skill. As soon as he left the inn, he leaped onto the tree trunk with the tip of his foot. Behind him was a continuous stream of shadows that kept surging out. And this scene was not to be seen by anyone. Helene Vivian raised her eyebrows and looked at the man sitting beside her. Can't we just write a letter and send it to the palace? Why do we have to make little seventh prince go back? He has been a third wheel for the entire journey. Do you want him to continue? Beligaju asked in a calm voice, as if he was narrating a fact. Helene Vivian guessed the reason for a long time, but she still couldn't figure it out. She was slightly stunned. The dark shadows all looked up at the sky, speechless. Pure little master, you have been tricked by the royal family. All right, it's time for us to eat at another restaurant. The smell of these dead shrimps is really bad. Belegaju's posture with his legs slightly crossed always made him look like a young master from a noble family, even if his current dressing was not outstanding. Sure enough, it was important to have a good face. Helian Wei wiped the corner of her mouth and followed Bailey Jiu out of Bayview Seafood Restaurant. It was only in the afternoon that they could finally have lunch. When Governor Chen received Belegaju's verbal order, he was obviously excited. He thought that the royal family would return to the capital city directly. He did not expect that they would come to the provincial capital. In that case, he could solve the problems that he couldn't solve. As Governor Chen thought about this, he turned around and ordered the manservant, inform all the officials in the provincial capital that the second-in-command of the provincial capital is coming to take office. Yes. The servant raised his head in confusion. Sir. That's it. Aren't you going to report the name of this new lord? Governor Chen's eyes darkened slightly. That's it. Only in this way could he achieve the effect that Her Highness wanted. When the few officials in the provincial capital received the news, they were a little nervous. After all, Magistrate Liao of the provincial capital was unlucky and 4 of his colleagues were implicated. Now that all the positions in the provincial capital were vacant, logically speaking, there should not be a new official taking office so soon. After all, Magistrate Liao's case had not been sent to the capital city for trial. However, when they thought about it carefully, they felt that it was not a big deal. Some of them believed that Magistrate Liao would not be punished. At most, he would just be changed his position. With the presence of the elder, those who wanted to stir up trouble in the provincial capital would be in vain. For example, the one with the surname Chen thought that he was nothing when he came to the capital city even though he was the governor of 3 provinces. Now, the most important thing was to see if this new official could be roped in. The officials had their own plans. After arriving at the magistrate's mansion, they waited for less than half an incense stick's worth of time before they saw a carriage slowly approaching. There were no bailiffs, but 2 black-clothed guards with sabers on each side of the carriage, as if they were protecting it. Our new colleague is here. Someone was obviously tempted. This person was the general stationed in the provincial capital that Governor Chen had always been afraid of. This general was not just anyone, he was the backbone of Elder Halian's army. Liao Qingtian. He and Magistrate Liao were brothers from the same mother. For so many years, the reason why Fuping County was so difficult to investigate was because of these 2 brothers. One of them was in the civil and the other was in the military, so it was difficult to find a breakthrough. No matter how high Governor Chen's position was, everything would be in vain if he did not have an army. Liao Qingtian was a man who had won many battles. He was afraid that if he were to make a move on him, it would cause suspicion among the generals from the other families, which would be disadvantageous to the retired emperor. Therefore, no matter how many problems there were in the provincial capital, as long as Liao Qingtian did not commit any serious crimes, he could not go overboard. Now, it was up to His Highness to deal with him. Governor Chen stood aside and quietly raised his head to look at the carriage. When the door of the carriage opened, the crowd could not help but take a step forward. The first thing that came into view was an ivory robe, followed by long slender legs and a tall and straight figure. When this person got down from the carriage and revealed his godlike handsome face, everyone could feel the ice-cold noble aura. They were all stunned. This is our new colleague, why is he so handsome? To be honest, one would need to be quite old to be able to get to this position in the provincial capital. None of the people around them were good-looking, they all had big bellies, fat heads, and big ears. This new colleague was so handsome that it was a little unreal. Moreover, he was too young. Could it be that he had some kind of background? But he did not look like one based on the clothes he was wearing. Just when the officials were guessing, the man held the curtain with his left hand that was wearing a white glove. He said in a deep voice, "Lord Wei, we have arrived. You can get down from the carriage now." Lord Wei? Hearing this name, the first reaction of the officials was to look at the smiling Liao Qingtian. As expected, That person's face had already darkened. His eyes were emitting an unfriendly light. At this moment, Hellion Vivian had already walked out. Her slightly tanned face appeared in front of the crowd as soon as her feet touched the ground. She was very ugly. "Greetings, lords. It's the first time we meet. Please pay more attention to me in the future." Hellion Vivian curved her thin lips inconspicuously. The officials looked at her and gradually felt that the rumors had been exaggerated. How capable could a young man who was not even 18 years old be? It had been exaggerated to the point that he did not look like a real person. They reckoned that with Governor Chen's help and Magistrate Liao's carelessness, they were fooled. Such a person would not be able to achieve much in political affairs. When the time came, they would still be the ones in charge of the provincial capital. Chapter 495. Liao Qingtian's eyes dimmed, but soon, a smile appeared on his face. Governor Chen was more worried for Hellion Vivian when he saw his expression. If Liao Qingtian showed his anger, it might be easier to deal with him. The most taboo in the official field was to show a smiling tiger. Because no one knew if he would stab you in the back while he was smiling. Liao Qingtian pretended to be friendly and extended his hand. "We've heard a lot about Lord Wei's great achievements. It's our honor to have you here in the provincial capital." Hellion Vivian looked at Liao Qingtian in front of her. Her first reaction was to observe his attire. He was a general, but he had a say in the civil officials. She could see how ambitious this general was. Hellion Vivian smiled. "It's my first time here, and I've just entered the official field. May I know who you are?" "This is General Liao." Governor Chen walked over and emphasized the word Liao. Hellion Vivian immediately understood something, but she still greeted him politely. "General Liao, I've heard a lot about you." Liao Qingtian laughed in his heart when he heard what she said. This kind of person was indeed smart, but he was easy to manipulate. So what if he had Chen's support? He would just go with the flow. He would give this Wei guy a little more time. If this person was smart enough to apologize to his elder brother and nephew in front of him, go against his previous judgment, and help him get rid of this Chen guy, he would pretend that nothing had happened. Otherwise, he would make him regret stepping into the provincial capital for the rest of his life. However, looking at Wei's appearance, he would not be able to do anything. "Since Lord Wei is here, let's have a good meal together." Liao Qingtian's sense of loyalty was in line with his image as a general. "Let's go to Bayview Seafood Restaurant." Hellion Vivian smirked when she heard the words Bayview Seafood Restaurant. She said meaningfully, "That's a good place. I didn't expect Lord Wei to have heard of the Bayview Seafood Restaurant in the provincial capital. It seems that the seafood in the provincial capital is doing well." Liao Qingtian stroked his beard and looked proud. Many officials chimed in and bragged about the restaurant. It was not difficult to figure out who the real boss of Bayview Seafood Restaurant was. Liao Qingtian took the lead and walked forward through the exclusive passageway of Bayview Seafood Restaurant. The people who came to receive them were different, so they did not know Hellion Vivian. When Liao Qingtian saw Hellion Vivian for the first time, he had already thought of a countermeasure. It was said that children from the countryside were simple and honest. However, many people did not know that sometimes, these children could not resist the temptation of the outside world. Looking at Wei's shabby dressing, Liao Qingtian could imagine that this person had not seen much of the world. After eating the lobster and abalone later, he would let him experience the feeling of being a rich person. Perhaps he would be able to settle this matter. However, just when Liao Qingtian finished his thought, Hellion Vivian smiled and said after all the officials had sat down, "Seeing that General Liao is so familiar with the people in Bayview Seafood Restaurant, I'm sure you can answer a question in my mind." Liao Qingtian thought to himself that this poor kid must have never seen how lobster looked like. He wanted to ask about the dishes on the table, so the smile on his face became more obvious. "Little Wei, what's the matter? Just tell me directly." "It's nothing," Hellion Vivian said casually. "Everyone knows that I'm a poor scholar. I just took up the post, so I don't have much savings." Upon hearing this, all the officials showed a smile that said we knew it. There was a slight disdain between their eyebrows, but they comforted her. "Lord Wei, don't say that. A hero's background is not important. No matter where you come from, All of us know what you've done for the people." Governor Chen was the only one who coughed softly when he heard Hellion Vivian say that she was poor. Not to mention the 10 boxes of gold that the extremely wealthy third prince gave as a betrothal gift before the wedding. Just looking at the income of Wei Zi world, the princess consort would probably count the silvers until her hands went numb. If such a person said that she was poor, wouldn't it mean that they could not even compare to a beggar? Governor Chen glanced at Hellion Vivian silently and sighed in his heart. Hellion Vivian naturally knew what he meant, but it did not affect the speed of her speech. She spoke slowly and coolly. "Actually, I arrived at the provincial capital at noon. I wanted to have a meal before going to the Yamen, but I didn't expect that I would spend more than half of my life savings. I just want to ask General Liao, why are the seafood in Bayview Seafood Restaurant so expensive? It's more than 10 times more expensive than what the fishermen sell." The few officials were stunned when they heard this. They never thought that someone would dare to ask this question. This was something that everyone was well aware of and couldn't be exposed. Otherwise, the crowd held their teacups and glanced at Liao Qingtian secretly. Sure enough, his smiling face froze. Hellion Vivian acted as if she did not see Liao Qingtian's expression at all. She gestured with her hands. Moreover, the prawns served are not the same as those in the fish tank. The small ones are a scam. You have never encountered such a situation before. No. The rest of the people were well aware of the twists and turns in the story. They wondered why they had encountered such a situation. They were officials, after all. Bayview Seafood Restaurant was indeed a scammer, but they would never scam the officials. They understood this principle very well. While they were thinking, they subconsciously looked at Liao Qingtian, whose eyes were gloomy. Hellion Wei smiled and said, "Then you guys are really lucky. I bumped into them as soon as I arrived at the provincial capital. I wanted to ask someone to do me justice, but I didn't expect that the waiter would tell me bluntly that the Bayview Seafood Restaurant had someone in charge and asked me not to court my own death." Liao Qingtian was listening by the side. He cursed in his heart. What an idiot. He was thinking of striking first to gain the upper hand by dismissing the waiter. Once the news had died down, he would then ask the waiter to come back. This would also prevent Wei from finding any loopholes and pushing the blame on him. However, Hellion Vivian continued, "I've thought about it for a long time, but I'm still not sure who the waiter is. General Liao, you've been in the provincial capital for so long, who do you think it is?" "It's hard to say." Liao Qingtian subconsciously started to draw a line between himself and Bayview Seafood Restaurant. Maybe the waiter was just bluffing. Hellion Vivian supported her chin with her fingers as if she was thinking about Liao Qingtian's suggestion. She then curved her thin lips. "Why didn't I think that the waiter was just bluffing? General Liao, you're really thoughtful. You're flattering me." Liao Qingtian chuckled. It was so easy to fool him. It seemed like this Wei guy was easier to deal with than what he had imagined. Chapter 496. Hellion Vivian sat up straight. "Since it's a lie, it's slandering our department. In my opinion, this Bayview Seafood Restaurant shouldn't continue to operate. Otherwise, the merchants from other places would really think that this restaurant is under General Liao's protection. Then, it would be hard to explain." "Lord Wei, do you mean that Bayview Seafood Restaurant should be closed down?" Liao Qingtian could no longer put on a smile. He did not expect that Wei Liao had said so much just to pave the way for this sentence. However, Hellion Wei smirked and said, "General Liao has just said that the waiter of Bayview Seafood Restaurant is a braggart. Not only does he not follow the rules, but he also cheats people everywhere. Keeping this restaurant will only hinder the development of the provincial capital. I guess Lord Wei still doesn't know the reason why this Bayview Seafood Restaurant was opened." Liao Qingtian sneered. "The sea goods offered to the palace every year are all from Bayview Seafood Restaurant. The retired emperor likes it very much. If Bayview Seafood Restaurant is closed down and the retired emperor blames us, who will bear the responsibility?" Hellion Vivian put down the teacup in her hand. "If the retired emperor knows that this is a deceiving restaurant, he won't allow it to continue operating, right? Lord Wei, you must have evidence before doing anything," Liao Qingtian said gloomily. "It's too early for you to say that it's a deceiving restaurant." Hellion Vivian looked at Liao Qingtian and laughed. Judging from General Liao's behavior, I can't help but suspect that this Bayview seafood restaurant has a close relationship with you. Upon hearing this, Liao Qingtian's expression darkened. He knew that he was once again tricked by Wei Liao. His eyes were dark and heavy. Suddenly, he laughed and raised the wine cup in his hand. Lord Wei, you're so eloquent. No wonder my brother was defeated by you. General Liao, you must be joking. Hellion Vivian was not afraid of his terrifying murderous aura. She stood up calmly and held the cup in her left hand. She said calmly, Magistrate Liao was defeated by his greed. The imperial court spent money to nurture officials, it's not for them to be greedy. It's natural for him to be defeated. Liao Qingtian looked at Hellion Vivian. After a long time, he laughed. Good, very good. Since this Wei fellow did not know how to appreciate his kindness and refused a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit, he would let this person have a taste of the consequences of going against him, Liao Qingtian. The two of them could be considered to have completely declared war. Nothing could be seen on the surface, but waves were surging in the dark. The atmosphere of the meal was very strange. The officials who had originally intended to befriend the newly appointed Hellion Vivian immediately gave up when they saw this scene. After offending General Liao in the provincial capital, there was no need to consider the consequences. Besides, the Bayview Seafood Restaurant was built under the orders of the elder in the capital. All the rules and regulations were set in advance. Now, Lord Wei actually suggested to close it down? What was the difference between this and seeking death? I didn't expect the Princess Consort to fall out with Liao Qingtian so soon. Governor Chen changed the way he addressed Hellion Vivian when there were only 3 people left. Hellion Vivian sat casually on the wooden chair in the yamen and said casually, I'll be here for less than 2 days. I don't have time to waste with him. Since he dared to cheat me of my money, I'll make him spit it out the same way he cheated me. But this Bayview Seafood Restaurant. Governor Chen glanced at Belegaju's side profile as he spoke. I'm afraid it's not that easy to close it down. This involves the power of the capital. If we make a big fuss and fail to achieve our goal, all our efforts will be in vain. Belegaju did not say a word. He was holding a scroll from the side of his face, but no emotions could be seen on his face. Governor Chen always knew that His Highness was unpredictable, but now he really wanted to know what was on his mind. This way, he would have a better idea of what to do. Belegaju naturally knew what he was thinking about. Through the scroll, he said faintly, Governor Chen, what do you think we should do to punish a general who has military exploits but harms his neighbors? This. Governor Chen looked down hesitantly. I'm slow-witted, I can't think of a good idea. Belegaju tapped on the rice paper with his slender fingers and said with a faint smile, take advantage of the situation. Governor Chen, who did not know the cause and effect, did not understand. However, he was sure of one thing. Based on Liao Qingtian's hot temper, he would definitely be unhappy about today's incident and would definitely submit a memorial to the higher-ups. After all, this Bayview Seafood Restaurant was not an ordinary restaurant. He did not know how the higher-ups would react. Forgive him for being old. He was not smart enough to follow the third prince around. However, there was one thing that Governor Chen was right about. Liao Qingtian did write a memorial to be reported to the capital city elder's residence. Every time he put down the brush, his eyes were filled with malice. 4 or 5 officials from Liao's faction stood on his left and right, flattering him in 2s and 3s, General Liao is the best. Once the memorial is passed to the elders, I'm afraid that Wei will have to slap his own face this time. He didn't even investigate the background of our Bayview Seafood Restaurant before showing off his strength here. He is so stupid. He's just a petty person who got what he wanted. General Liao blew away the ink stains on the brush. Since he has the support of the governor of 3 provinces, he's the boss. How dare he be so arrogant in front of me? I'd like to see how he's going to run away when the elder arrives. Someone nodded in agreement. He's just a small character who can't play the role of a beam. He's just a burden to us. However, General, shouldn't we remind the people at Bayview Seafood Restaurant to collude their statements so that there won't be any more problems? Yes, we should remind them that this Wei guy is a little smart. We have to be careful of him. It's best if we can think of a way to make him suffer and lose his official title. This way, we can ask that Chen guy to release my nephew and the rest. General Liao played with the prayer beads in his hand, but he could not suppress the malice that was emanating from him. The other officials looked at each other and said, "This is the provincial capital. That Wei guy is from another city. Although he's staying in the Yamen runners in the Yamen are all our people. If he wants to know something, someone will report it to him immediately. He has no advantage in this aspect. However, I'm afraid that Lord Liao was careless in the past because of this. We've all heard about what that Wei guy did in Fuping County. He was able to arrest Lord Liao partly because he has the support of Governor Chen and partly because he has a good advisor by his side. As long as we can think of a way to make something happen to this advisor, it'll be enough to give that Wei guy a headache." Advisor. The image of that noble and tall figure who didn't take him seriously appeared in front of General Liao's eyes. He sneered, "Let's do it this way. It's fine that you're so arrogant, but even the advisor accompanying you is so blind. Serves you right." Chapter 497. The officials nodded. In their hearts, they felt that Wei was overestimating himself. Not to mention that General Liao would not take action, the consequences of the elder receiving the letter were not something that a mere county magistrate like him could bear. Just wait and see. The capital would definitely take action regarding the Bayview seafood restaurant incident this time. It was nighttime and the moon was hanging high in the sky. In a mansion in the capital. The elder of the Hellion clan was sitting on the main seat. He was already very old, but due to his pair of cloudy eyes, he did not give off the slightest sense of peace. Instead, those who stared at him for a long time would feel uneasy. The people sitting around him were all stewards within the clan. Each and every one of them had a smile on their faces. There's still less than 5 days' time. I'm afraid Wei doesn't even know the knack for it. After 5 days, the ones who will truly be in charge of the Hellion clan will be us. At that time, we'll still need to ask the elders to choose a reliable clan leader. Don't worry, I already have a candidate in mind. Elder Hellion took a sip of white wine. However, there has been a small problem recently. Some of the stewards were very smart. After hearing Elder Hellion's words, they quickly thought of the case that happened in Fuping County 2 days ago. "Elder, are you worried about that county magistrate Wei? He's just a county magistrate from nowhere. Why should I worry about him?" Elder Hellion sneered, but he was calm. "It's Governor Chen who is backing him up. He was sent by the retired emperor. It would take a lot of effort to deal with him." While the two of them were talking, suddenly, a servant handed over a booklet to him. When Elder Hellion saw the contents of the booklet, the corner of his mouth turned cold. He really thinks he's a big shot and dares to touch anything. He's just a mere county magistrate, but he's really controlling everything. While Elder Hellion was reading the booklet, the people below also took a glance at it. Is he trying to shut down the Bayview seafood restaurant? After that, everyone laughed. That little county magistrate is worried that his head is too heavy for him. He even dares to interfere with the Bayview seafood restaurant incident. Isn't there still Governor Chen? Elder Hellion folded the booklet leisurely and said, "Bayview seafood restaurant is an old brand that sells seafood. How many years has it been? It was established even before the retired emperor ascended the throne. Now that they want to shut down Bayview seafood restaurant, they must be dreaming. I was just worried about how to deal with that Chen guy. Now, they have given me a good excuse." As soon as he finished speaking, Elder Hellion lifted his gaze and ordered the servant who delivered the booklet, "Tell Qingtian and the rest to go all out with the punishment. If anyone dares to tarnish the reputation of Bayview seafood restaurant, arrest them immediately except for Governor Chen himself. Don't worry about their official positions. After I report this matter to the retired emperor, I will personally make a trip to the provincial capital to meet them." "Yes." The person respectfully accepted the order and left. Outside, the night grew darker. In the inner courtyard of the imperial palace, the little one held his stomach and rolled around on the dragon bed. A group of imperial physicians were anxiously waiting for him. It was not because of anything else. The main reason was that the little seventh prince did not even allow them to take a look. It was obvious that the little seventh prince was sick. They could not understand why he would throw a pillow at them the moment they approached him. That strength was simply, it was enough to knock them down. It was not an exaggeration at all. The little seventh prince possessed this kind of divine strength. It was normal for him to beat people up. The imperial physicians stood at the head of the bed and looked at each other in dismay. "It's your turn to go over this time." "No, no, no. I'm not qualified enough. It's better for Imperial Physician Zhong to go over." What kind of joke was this? Whoever went over now would become the next target of the little seventh prince. He had just walked a little closer and was still feeling a little dizzy after being hit by the pillow. He really wanted to ask, how many pillows did the little seventh prince hide? Ever since they entered, the little seventh prince had treated them like scourges. He would hit anyone who came close to him. At this rate, they would not even know what the little seventh prince's condition was, let alone checking his pulse. They could not see anything through the screen. Eunuch Sun was very anxious. He had already come to the bedroom and was wandering around outside. When he saw the imperial physicians coming out, he went up to them and asked, "How is it? How is the little seventh prince?" Speaking of which, the imperial physician was still a little shy. He touched the back of his head and said, "The little seventh prince did not let us take a look." "What do you mean by not letting you take a look?" The person who said this was the retired emperor. After receiving the news that his precious grandson was seriously ill, he did not even sign the memorial and did not change into his court robes. He just rushed over in a hurry. The reason why Eunuch Sun was standing outside was to wait for the retired emperor. The imperial physicians' faces turned pale and they all wanted to kneel down. The retired emperor didn't have time to listen to their nonsense. He walked in with large strides and went around the screen in an instant. The little one was still lying on the bed, looking at the ceiling angrily and thinking about what to eat later. His expression was very serious. As soon as the retired emperor saw that little handsome face with a pout, his heart ached. This grandson of his had never been sick since he was a child. He lived like an iron wall. The number of times that he could lie down obediently like this could be counted on one hand. This kid used to live a good life in the wild mountains as a monkey. Why did he fall ill after a trip to the provincial capital? "Little seventh prince, tell Grandpa Emperor, where do you hurt?" The little one gave him 2 words without hesitation, "Stomach." "Stomach." The retired emperor reached out and touched the little one's soft and tender stomach. He raised his eyebrows in confusion. Could it be that he was starving after going out? This was not possible. Little seventh prince could even eat raw fish. He was born to not be hungry. What is going on? The retired emperor turned his head and asked the shadow beside him. The shadow did not know how to answer. Their eyes flickered. The little one did not forget his third brother's instructions before he left. He said with a serious face, "Someone forced me to eat a pot of prawns. Did you not eat enough?" The retired emperor guessed based on his precious grandson's thinking. "Someone, ask the imperial kitchen to prepare a dish of braised prawns." The little one smacked his lips. He was drooling when he heard the words braised prawns. However, he could not eat as he had not finished his business. "It's not that I didn't eat enough. It's that hateful restaurant that made me eat dead prawns. After I finished eating, my stomach started to hurt. I tried to reason with them, but they said that there was someone behind them." The little one rolled around the quilt and turned around. He turned his back to the retired emperor with a melancholy expression. "The world has hurt me. I want to be alone." His expression was small. How could such a thing happen? The retired emperor was really angry. He was not the only one who was protective of his son. Their little seventh prince only ate a mouthful of food all his life. He never caused trouble when he went out. How could someone give dead prawns to a child? At the thought of this, the retired emperor turned his head and said coldly, "An Ying, tell me, where did little seventh prince eat the prawns?" An Ying lowered his head and said, "The Bayview restaurant in the provincial capital." Chapter 498. Bayview Restaurant. The retired emperor furrowed his brows. Wasn't this the restaurant that specialized in providing seafood to the imperial family? Among the ministers, this restaurant had always had a good reputation. Branches could be found in almost every coastal city. He had been to Bayview Restaurant when he was young and had a good impression of it. The lobsters were big and fresh, and the service was very good. He had also visited a few local people incognito, and all of them praised Bayview Restaurant. How could such a restaurant use dead lobsters to cook? Could it be that what he saw back then was just an illusion? Was there someone behind this? Did restaurants nowadays start to do this? The retired emperor was infuriated. He rubbed his grandson's tummy with his fingers and said, "Little Seven, tell your grandfather about what happened at Bayview Restaurant in detail later. Now, let's ask the imperial physicians to come in and check your pulse and prescribe 2 sets of medicine." "I don't want to take medicine." The little one showed his dignified face and refused very straightforwardly. What a joke. If the imperial physicians came in, he would be exposed for pretending to have a stomachache. "Me. Don't expect me to give in." The retired emperor coaxed the child. "Good boy, how can you not take medicine when you are sick? Don't worry, the medicine is not bitter at all." In order to pretend to be sick, the little one was lying on his stomach with an adorable posture. In addition, the little 7th prince had a domineering appearance. When he heard the retired emperor's words, he replied coolly, "Imperial grandfather, although I am young, I am still intelligent. There is no medicine that isn't bitter." The retired emperor was speechless. "Then tell me what to do." The retired emperor was distressed just now, but now he wanted to give this troublesome grandson of his a good beating. The little one thought for a while and said with a serious face, "I heard from third brother that the red-crowned crane has celestial aura, and eating it can strengthen one's body. Let the imperial kitchen cook a pot of red-crowned crane soup. Imperial grandfather can drink some when the time comes." Eunuch's son almost vomited blood when he heard this. Why did it seem that the 7th prince was still thinking about the retired emperor's red-crowned crane? Did His Highness forget why he was chased out in the first place? The shadows were selectively deaf. All of them raised their heads and looked at the beam. The retired emperor's expression changed, and the roots of his teeth were itching. "You stinking brat. Retired emperor, please calm down, calm down." Eunuch's son hurriedly went up to stop him. "His Highness is still sick." The Emperor Emeritus took a deep breath and said, "Is there anyone as sick as him? He didn't forget to eat when his stomach was hurting. That. It's not like you don't know, His Highness is like this." Eunuch's son really couldn't find a way to smooth things over for the little master, so he found a dry excuse. The little one kept a straight face and said, "Imperial grandfather, you're already so old. Don't get angry so easily. Who was the one causing trouble for him?" The retired emperor was helpless. He glared at the little one and said, "Tell me, do you really have a stomachache or are you faking it?" "Really?" The little one stuck out his little butt and said, "When I was with my uncle, I didn't eat anything dead." This was the truth. He had always been alive and kicking. The retired emperor was so busy that he missed the opportunity to dote on his third son, so he gave all his attention to little Seven. However, it was too dangerous in the imperial palace. He could only be at ease when he chased him up the mountain. This child was also different from the other princes. He ate whatever he was given, so it was easy to feed him. He also heard that it was difficult for the children in the White Academy to eat meat. Now that he heard what the little one said, he felt sorry for him. "You have a stomachache now, so you can't eat red-crowned cranes. Eat something that's easy to digest." The retired emperor stroked the little bald head in front of him. When he was about to summon the people from the imperial kitchen, he saw a eunuch walking in with a booklet in his hand, saying that he had something important to report. The retired emperor took the booklet and flipped through it. Suddenly, he sneered and said, "I see, no wonder there's someone up there. There's really someone up there. Little Seven, tell me, what's going on with this Bayview seafood restaurant?" Little Baldy nodded heavily and told him everything that had happened in the provincial capital. When he was done, he started to cover his stomach. Slap. The retired emperor slapped the booklet in his palm. His eyes were filled with coldness. "Eunuch's son, go and get ready. We'll leave the palace tomorrow." "Yes." Eunuch Sun took the booklet carefully. He was shocked when he saw the words on it. He more or less understood why the retired emperor was angry. It was a booklet to sue Governor Li. It would be fine if that was all. It also mentioned Lord Wei, saying that he bullied the restaurant based on his personal preferences and his official position. It was really infuriating and so on. Eunuch Sun served the retired emperor for a long time. Of course, he knew who Lord Wei was. She was the princess consort. Not to mention her status as the princess consort, the achievements she made in Fuping County 2 days ago were incomparable to those officials who were paid by the state but did not do official work. The retired emperor was very happy when he saw Governor Chen's booklet. Thinking about it, it made sense. Every year, when it was the dry season, everyone could see the retired emperor's worry. The commoners had no food to eat and had all rushed to the capital, as if they were beggars. There was nothing more unbearable than this. Now, the princess consort had developed a water pump. This was a huge project that benefited the entire War Dragon Empire. If it was not because the princess consort and His Highness were not back yet and it was inconvenient to announce their identities, the retired emperor would have celebrated the princess consort's name. How could she tolerate being framed like this? The more Eunuch Sun thought about it, the angrier he got. He packed up faster. The retired emperor's eyes were calm, but he had the thought of completely overhauling the Hellion family. If Elder Hellion did not submit this booklet, perhaps he would not be so angry. After all, the most important thing in the imperial court was balance. It was not good to push anyone too hard. But this was just a small restaurant. They dared to deceive their superiors to such an extent. How many people in the imperial court were covering for this restaurant? Even he was deceived. His favorite seafood. He did not even know that he liked seafood. Liao Qingtian, who was far away in the provincial capital, also received the booklet. He was very happy. What did I say? Wei is courting death if he wants to take over Bayview Restaurant. The elder has passed the booklet directly to the retired emperor. He will arrive at the provincial capital tomorrow afternoon. General Liao is really smart. The officials sitting at the side gave him a thumbs up. They laughed and said, Wei is going to regret it. Regret? When the retired emperor knows about this, he will not tolerate him. Liao Qingtian's lips curved into a cold arc. He will definitely be fired. Guards, capture the private advisor who is following Wei. Since the elder had allowed him to do as he pleased, then he didn't need to have any scruples anymore. Chapter 499. It was night time, the moon was shining and the tree branches were swaying. Hellion Vivian was someone who would never fight an unprepared battle. Since she was going against Liao Qingtian, she had to consider his identity. Since he was a general, she had to make a trip to Profound Heavens. As the boss, he was very friendly when he saw his own branch, so Hellion Vivian was very happy and smiled all the way. Beligaju looked at her and knew what she was happy about. It was because of the money. However, it was undeniable that Profound Heavens business was very popular. There were many people who came to order armaments, and ordinary armament stores would definitely let those people go back first. Profound Heaven's approach was to set up a special tea house in the store, where customers could sit and wait for some snacks and sunflower seeds. The service was very good. Profound Heaven's sunflower seeds were free, but the tea and snacks were charged. Hellion Vivian had just finished her meal and was not interested in these things, so she asked for a cup of water. At this time, a master and servant in brocade clothes walked over from their table. When they heard Hellion Vivian asking for water, they frowned and looked at her. The servant girl lowered her voice and said, "Miss, let's go to the other side to sit, so that we don't get into trouble." The young lady glanced at Hellion Vivian arrogantly, then walked over and said, "I really don't want to see these country bumpkins. Miss, don't worry, when Master Wang comes out and sees that you are unhappy, he will definitely drive those two people away." The maidservant arranged the tea bowls and said, "Coming to Profound Heavens and only asking for a cup of plain water, this is a joke. Fortunately, there is one among them who looks noble, but now it seems that it is all a pretense. I guess they can't afford the armaments of Profound Heavens, so they want to come and enjoy." The young lady snorted, "They are really poor. Who said they are not? As the servant girl locked the door, she glanced at Hellion Wei Wei's table, the corners of her mouth curled up in ridicule. Hellion Vivian curled his thin lips in amusement and turned the teacup in his palm with his fingers. The two of them seemed to want to show off. When the waiter came over to ask, the two of them ordered a table full of snacks. Here, take these 2 pieces of desserts to them. Let them stay where they want to cool down. Don't pollute the air of profound heavens, the young lady said sarcastically. The maidservant took the snacks and walked towards Hellion Vivian's table. She raised her chin and looked down at Hellion Vivian, saying, "This is a reward from my miss. If you are full, please leave quickly." Hellion Vivian only glanced at her and smiled evilly. She said slowly, "What qualifications do you have to ask us to leave? Even the receptionists of profound heavens didn't ask. Who do you think you are? You." The servant girl didn't think that this person would be so unappreciative. "Do you know who my young miss is? How dare you treat me like this?" He really refused a toast only to be forced to drink the forfeit. "Good, very good. If you want to make a scene, we will accompany you. When you are driven out later, don't come begging me." In the face of such a clamor, Hellion Vivian's thin lips slightly opened and only said one word, "Get lost." The servant girl's face was completely green. She turned around angrily and walked to the side of the woman who was sitting. "Miss." The gorgeously dressed woman clenched the handkerchief in her hand. "The country people have no manners. Go and invite young Master Wang here and let him deal with this matter." "Yes." The servant girl took the order and walked towards the backyard of profound heavens in a hurry. Before she left, she didn't forget to glare at Hellion Vivian and the rest, with an expression that said, "You wait and see." Hellion Vivian sat lazily with the wine cup at her fingertips. "Young Master Wang? Isn't it little friend Wang Tungyun?" She really didn't know when little friend Wang Tungyun got to know such a master and servant. In the backyard of profound heavens, Wang Tungyun was still helping to inspect the armament parts this time. He didn't expect that someone would pass an envelope to him. The envelope was tightly wrapped and he couldn't see what was inside. Wang Tungyun opened it in confusion and was shocked by the flash of gold. Then, he pulled the receptionist over. "Where is the person who sent the envelope? Oh my God, when did young master come to the provincial capital? Why didn't he have any news at all? He should still be drinking tea in front." The receptionist had never seen the usually gentle young Master Wang so agitated. After he finished speaking, he felt a gust of wind blow past his ear. When he reacted, the person in front of him was already gone. When he came to the tea house, Wang Tungyun's first reaction was to find a woman dressed in female clothing. "Young Master Wang, my miss is over there." The servant girl just walked over and led Wang Tungyun to the table. Wang Tungyun thought that the servant girl was newly received by his young master. He didn't expect that it was the eldest daughter of the Liao family who often came to find him these 2 days, Liao Wenwen. Wang Tungyun narrowed his eyes but didn't show it on his face. Liao Wenwen smiled sweetly and didn't look like a bully just now. She pushed the snacks on the table forward and said shyly, "Young Master Wang, eat some snacks first. Don't tire yourself out." Wang Tungyun didn't have the intention to be friendly with the Liao family. He was just worried that this was the provincial capital and he had to give face. But this Liao Wenwen came to profound heavens every day to find him after only meeting once. Wang Tungyun frowned and politely refused, "Miss Liao, I still have something to do." After that, he wanted to leave. What a joke, he hadn't found his young master yet. How could he have the time to waste here? "Young Master Wang." Liao Wenwen softened her voice and sounded a little coquettish. To be honest, she was really good-looking. She had an oval face, almond-shaped eyes, and was dressed up beautifully. Liao Qingtian took care of her so that he could use his daughter's beauty to make connections in this circle. There were many young masters from influential families in the provincial capital who were interested in her. But Liao Wenwen felt that those people were just from a small place. Wang Tungyun in front of her had a strong family background and was transferred from the capital city to be a manager. Profound Heavens was not an ordinary armament store. To be able to become a manager here, his ability was outstanding in the entire Dragon War Empire. So when Liao Wenwen saw Wang Tungyun, she put all her focus on him. She didn't believe that with her looks, he would reject her. Thinking of this, Liao Wenwen's jade-like hand hooked Wang Tungyun's left arm and said coquettishly, "I came to find you personally. You should spend more time with me." Wang Tungyun wailed in his heart. He had never seen such an open woman. Chapter 500. When the servant saw that he did not move, she thought that something good was about to happen. She smiled and said, "Young Master Wang, our mistress ordered so many snacks because she was afraid that you would be hungry if you were busy for too long. Unlike those two country bumpkins behind you, it's fine if they don't have money, but they still want to come to profound heavens and pretend to be masters." As she spoke, she raised her chin and glanced back at Helian Wei Wei and the others with contempt. Wang Tungyun was still looking at the scenery outside, thinking that his young master would be standing in a corner. He looked for a long time but did not see her. When he heard the servant's words, he frowned in disapproval. "You." Wang Tungyun said unhappily as he followed the servant's gaze. Just as he was about to tell them not to put on such a demeaning attitude in profound heavens, he was stunned. That was the young master and the royal family. The young master was looking at them with a smile, and the light in her eyes. For some reason, Wang Tungyun had an illusion that he was going to be unlucky. He could not help but swallow his saliva. "Young Master Wang, look at their clothes, it's really, tsk. The servant continued. Wang Tungyun's face suddenly became a little ugly. Liao Wenwen did not know what he was thinking. She thought that Wang Tungyun did not want those country bumpkins to spoil the atmosphere of profound heavens. She tugged at his sleeve. "Young Master Wang." Wang Tungyun could not bear it anymore. After pushing her hand away, he walked to Helian Vivian's table and seemed to want to call her young master. Helian Vivian looked up and gave him a warning look. Wang Tungyun was smart and immediately understood what the young master meant. He thought about it and did not greet Helian Vivian. Helian Vivian stood up and smiled. "My surname is Wei." Cough. "Hello young Master Wei." Wang Tungyun maintained a poker face but thought in his heart, when did his young master change her surname to Wei? The world changed so quickly, he could not accept it at all. "Okay." The servant sneered. "Are you trying to get close to our young Master Wang?" Wang Tungyun thought. "Who the fuck is your family? My surname is Wang, your surname is Liao, okay? Don't slander me in front of my young master. Young master, you must have the ability to distinguish between right and wrong. I'm really innocent." Helian Wei Wei completely ignored the number 2 military advisor's gaze of redress and watched the show from the side without any sympathy. Liao Wenwen also walked over. After hearing the maid's words, she glanced at Helian Vivian contemptuously and said in a coquettish voice, "Young Master Wang, sometimes it's better not to get too close to these people. I was kind just now because I saw that they were pitiful and wanted to give them 2 pieces of pastries. Who knew that not only did they not appreciate me, but they also did not appreciate my kindness. It's better not to be friends with such country people who hate the rich." Wang Tungyun. A country bumpkin? Who? Are you fucking talking about the young master or the royal family? Please, is there something wrong with your eyes? Young master is now tanned and wears plain clothes. It's fine if you think of her as a poor person. Can't you feel the high and mighty aura of the royal family? That was something that could only be nurtured by ordinary people. Idiot. Wang Tungyun's words rolled in his throat several times but he did not scold her. His face was completely cold. However, the receptionists at the side saw something different. Steward Wang seemed to be especially respectful today, especially when he was treating that table of guests. It was not like his usual self at all. Thinking about it carefully, ever since the 2 guests instructed them to hand an envelope to Steward Wang, the atmosphere seemed to be a little different. Who were those 2 people? The receptionists looked at each other and were full of curiosity about the identity of Helian Vivian and the rest. Young Master Wang. Seeing that Wang Tungyun was honestly ignoring her, Liao Wenwen's face was a little embarrassed and she started to act coquettishly again. The maid saw the opportunity and said, "Young Master Wang, these 2 people are very disrespectful to young miss and look down on my young miss. The biggest taboo in profound heavens is for people to cause trouble in the shop. My young miss is not a harsh person. If these two people can apologize to my young miss, this matter will be considered over. If they don't, young Master Wang can drive them out. I've had enough of this poor smell. Drive us out. Hellion Vivian chuckled and leaned back on the back of the chair with her legs slightly crossed. Her lazy posture revealed a hint of evilness, but her heart was actually playful. Driving her out of profound heavens. It has to be said that this pair of master and servant really needed to be taught a lesson. Wang Tungyun also felt so. He now wished that he could be 3 meters away from Liao Wenwen to show his loyalty. Liao Wenwen looked at Wang Tungyun with her beautiful eyes. Young master, you don't have to go too far. As long as it's okay on the surface, it's fine. I don't have to hold on to their mistakes. Miss Liao is really generous. Hellion Vivian touched her chin with her fingers and smiled gently. You are indeed General Liao's daughter. However, I don't know if anyone has told Miss Liao that this is profound heavens, not your Liao manor. I advise you not to put on an appearance that you are the boss of profound heavens. It makes me feel very uncomfortable. If your face is too big, go home and look in the mirror. Don't think that everywhere is your home. You. Liao Wenwen clenched the handkerchief in her hand. Wherever she went, she was flattered by people. This was the first time someone spoke to her like this. It seems that this country bumpkin is tired of living. Young Master Wang, you also saw it. This person has no intention of repentance at all. Even if I am easy to bully, he can't be like this. After saying that, Liao Wenwen pretended to cover her eyes with the handkerchief and looked like she was about to cry. Someone come. Wang Tungyun finally opened his mouth. His voice carried a hint of coldness. Liao Wenwen looked at Hellion Wei proudly. Her expression seemed to be saying, did you see that? If you offend our miss, not only in Wei world, but even in the entire provincial capital, we can make you suffer. However, what she didn't expect was that Wang Tungyun's next sentence was, ask Miss Liao and the others to leave. Then tell all the stewards of profound heavens that if Miss Liao wants to enter in the future, they will not receive her. What did you say? Liao Wenwen's eyes completely widened at that moment. She even suspected that there was something wrong with her ears. She even forgot to pretend to cry and feel wronged. The expression on her face was as if she was punched in the face. It was wonderful to the extreme. All the guests looked over here. After all, profound heavens had always adhered to the principle that amiability breeds wealth. They would never easily refuse a customer, but now their attitude was so tough. How did Miss Liao offend Steward Wang? Chapter 501. Many people were puzzled. It was Liao Wenwen's first time being surrounded like this. She was so angry that she blurted out, Wang Tungyun, how dare you treat me like this? Aren't you afraid of my father? The maidservant standing beside her shouted, Steward Wang, you'd better think carefully before you speak. I have thought about it very clearly. Either you apologize to these two young masters, or leave profound heaven. Wang Tungyun smiled. His previous gentleness in the business field had turned into coldness. Liao Wenwen did not expect to receive such a reversal of the situation. Her face turned pale. You want me to apologize to these two country bumpkins? Wang Tungyun, are you really not afraid that my father will know about this? Your father? Wang Tungyun smiled. General Liao? Then you should go back and ask your father if he dares to fight with my young master. If he does, I will go to the capital and move the young master's hidden army here. If you want to fight with me, I will crush you. You. Liao Wenwen was so angry that her fingers were trembling. Seeing that Wang Tungyun was determined not to give her face, she glared at Hellion Vivian fiercely and said, you all wait and see. Her fierce words made her cry as if she was bullied. She ran out of Profound Heaven's shop with tears in her eyes. The receptionist was a local and reminded Wang Tungyun worriedly, Manager Wang, Miss Liao's father. I have my own way of dealing with it. Wang Tungyun interrupted the receptionist. The receptionist shook his head and said, although Liao Qingtian's position is not high, he has a lot of power in the provincial capital. Manager Wang, you should be careful. You don't have to fight with her because of two customers. Wang Tungyun thought to himself, do you know who those two customers are? If we don't chase Liao out now, we will all lose our jobs. How dare he ask their young master to leave in Profound Heaven's shop? Wasn't he asking for a slap in the face? Fortunately, he was not familiar with Liao, or else. Wang Tungyun sighed in fear and deliberately sent the receptionists away. I know, all of you can go back to your work. The receptionists answered, yes, sir. The curtain was lowered. Seeing that there was no one around, Wang Tungyun walked over to Helian Vivian's table. Helian Vivian smiled. Steward Wang really has good luck with women. Young master, please don't scold me. Wang Tungyun was on the verge of tears. Helian Vivian raised her beautiful eyebrows and said, I see that miss is very good to you. She can even make decisions for you in Wei Zi world. Hurry up and marry her, okay? Young master. Wang Tungyun immediately straightened his body. There's nothing between Liao Wenwen and me. Her father, Liao Qingtian, wants to get more weapons from us. That's why I got in touch with her. Young master, I've already sacrificed myself for our shop. Please don't misunderstand me. Helian Vivian's thin lips curled up. What you're saying is that our Profound Heaven has become a small shop. Since we're not happy with the business, then we'll change the list. In the future, no shop will provide armaments to the Liao family. Remember, this is the rule. Yes, yes. Wang Tungyun heaved a sigh of relief and said, Young master, why did you come to the provincial capital? Shouldn't the young master be in the palace at this time, thinking of ways to deal with the stewards of the Helian family? Helian Vivian casually nodded. I'm here to be the magistrate. Magistrate? Wang Tungyun's jaw dropped. After thinking about it carefully, he realized that a magistrate was a lowly official. Then, he silently glanced sideways at Bailey Jiaoju's handsome face that could not be ignored at any time. To be honest, he always felt pressured when he stood in front of the third prince. What about the third prince? Helian Vivian curled her lips and smiled. He's not a prince now. He's my private advisor. This boastful tone was enough. Wasn't he just a private advisor? Wait, what did the young master just say? Private advisor? Wang Tungyun swallowed his saliva. The future crown prince actually came to a provincial capital to be a private advisor? Did the retired emperor know about this? I thought it was easy to be an official. Helian Vivian held her chin and sighed. I didn't expect that wherever I go, there would be people bullying me. Wang Tungyun's mouth twitched in disbelief. Bullying you? Young master, do you think your invincible posture is fake? Moreover, if someone really bullied you, the person beside you could kill them in minutes. The royal family's methods are more brutal than yours. Helian Vivian did not admit that she was brutal at all. She felt that she was very weak and said lazily, Didn't the lady you were with just now want to drive me out? Young master, can this matter be let go? Wang Tungyun wanted to cry but had no tears. This was really a black mark in his life. If the brothers of the hidden army knew about this, who knows how they would ridicule him. Helian Vivian finished joking and said seriously, Liao Qingtian wants to find trouble with me. Go and tell the brothers to come to the provincial capital lightly. Find trouble with you? Wang Tungyun frowned. Why? Although Liao Qingtian is not a good person, he is very particular when it comes to being an official. Since you are the newly appointed magistrate, the first thing he should do is to win you over. Helian Vivian smiled beautifully. Because before I came to the provincial capital, I went to Fuping and caught his brother and nephew. Wang Tungyun was speechless. Also, Helian Vivian paused and smiled. I want to order the closure of Bayview Seafood Restaurant. Wang Tungyun had heard about the incident of Bayview Seafood Restaurant. He looked at the sky silently. I guess Liao Qingtian can even dream of you now. He really wants to strangle you. Thank you, but I don't like him. Helian Vivian leaned on Beligaju and said in a clear voice, Go and get ready, the brothers are probably itching for a fight. Wang Tungyun lowered his head and replied gently, Yes. It was not destined to be a peaceful night. After Liao Wenwen returned home, the first thing she did was to complain to Liao Qingtian. She kept saying, Those two country bumpkins are such an eyesore. Because of them, Wang Tungyun, who likes her, chased her out of Wei Zi world. Liao Qingtian listened to his beloved daughter and narrowed his eyes. You said that one of them has the surname Wei? Yes. Liao Wenwen was still wiping her tears. Liao Qingtian patted her back comfortingly and smiled coldly. He is not a country bumpkin, he is the newly appointed magistrate. The newly appointed magistrate? Then. Liao Wenwen hesitated. However, Liao Qingtian said in a ruthless tone, but it's true that he came from the countryside. Don't worry, after tomorrow, that Wei fellow will be a worthless commoner. You can vent your anger however you want. Now, the soldiers who captured Private Advisor Long should have been dispatched. Without this capable assistant, that Wei guy would be like a grasshopper after autumn. He would not be able to jump around. Chapter 502. The night was getting darker. Deep in the Yamen, Hellion Vivian didn't know what would happen next. The first thing she did when she came back was to take a bath. After the bath, her hair was still wet. Because of her identity, she couldn't be as comfortable as she was in the palace. No one would dry her hair for her, so she had to dry it herself. Unexpectedly, before she could even lift her hand, a silk cloth fell on her face. The silky satin fell on her head, followed by slightly cold fingers. You came out without drying yourself. Do you want to get sick? Beligaju frowned, but his movements were extremely patient. Hellion Vivian looked in his direction. She could only see a pair of straight legs that would make all men jealous. She couldn't even see his waist. It was obvious how good his figure was. Long-legged oppa. She didn't know why she suddenly thought of these 5 words. Hellion Wei pondered and smiled. She simply closed her eyes and enjoyed the comfortable strength like a cat. In this kind of weather, I shouldn't get sick. Where did you go just now? Beligaju's hand paused. He said casually, I did something. Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows and didn't ask. She more or less figured out Beligaju's way of doing things. He didn't want her to know anything that was bloody. Play chess later? His Highness's hobby was either sleeping or playing chess. Comparing the two, of course, playing chess was safer. Hellion Vivian planned it well. Beligaju took the silk cloth away and looked at her condescendingly. He looked like he could pick her up at any time. Then he said in a mischievous tone, Play chess? You give me 10 stones. When Hellion Vivian made the request, she didn't feel embarrassed at all. All of a sudden, Bailey Jiaoju leaned over and bit her lips. His voice was deep, and his elegant breath seeped in. What are the stakes? 10,000 taels of silver. Hellion Vivian blushed, which was rare. Bailey Jiaoju grunted, then stood up straight and looked at her with a smile that was not a smile. Shy. Why did he suddenly kiss me? Hellion Vivian muttered. Beligaju picked her up. The swaying light shone on his deep and stylish facial features, making him look ambiguous. Even his voice seemed to be deeper than before. Your chess skills are not good. I'll teach you. Without giving Hellion Vivian a chance to refuse, the two of them sat in front of the chessboard. Their white sleeves brushed against each other like a painting. Beligaju was really teaching her how to play chess. He just hugged her from behind and took her hand to take the white and black pieces. The heat from his fingertips made it difficult for her to concentrate. What are you thinking about again? Beligaju smiled and moved closer to her ear. This time, if you lose again, you will be at my mercy when we return to the palace. Do you understand? Hellion Vivian naturally understood what the word mercy meant. Her whole body went numb and she quickly pushed him away. She tidied up her clothes and then sat across from him. The corners of her mouth slightly curved. It's not certain that I will lose. As she said this, she put a white piece on the chessboard. Beligaju looked at the half of the chessboard that was conquered. His eyes paused, then he smiled evilly. You are a good disciple. You learned well. The black pieces were surrounded. Hellion Vivian smiled. She supported her chin with one hand and lazily hooked her finger at him. Beligaju just raised his eyebrows. He was caught off guard and she kissed him. That skill, how to say it? After practicing so many times, there was no improvement. But she won by taking the initiative. Beligaju's eyes darkened. He quickly took back the initiative and pulled her into his arms. The tip of his tongue slightly curved and his whole body emitted a pleasant smell. Hellion Vivian only felt her whole body go soft and her tailbone was a little numb. In a daze, he picked her up again. His left hand reached into her clothes and his right hand was still holding her hand. He took a black piece and put it on the chessboard. There was a crisp sound. Hellion Vivian looked at the chessboard with a red face. Only now did she know that although the black pieces were surrounded, it was because of him that they made a desperate counterattack. Do you admit defeat? Belegaju's voice was hoarse and his breath fell on her ear. Hellion Vivian's whole body trembled. Then it was a kiss that made her sink deeply. After a long while, she finally sat in his embrace. She looked at the beautiful eyes that were like the stars in the sky and gasped for breath. Belegaju pressed his lips against hers. Sandalwood wrapped around her bones. It was just a kiss and you can't breathe. Did you cheat? Hellion Vivian was very depressed. She had secretly put down 5 more pieces. How could he still win? How was this a game of chess? It was clearly a game of mutual deception. Belegaju looked at her and said slowly, "You can't win, so you say I cheated. Look at you. I deliberately lost to you because I love you." As Hellion Wei spoke, she secretly smiled. It seemed that her intensive training during this period of time was not in vain. Now, she could even say sweet nothings at her fingertips. As a domineering president, these were all essential skills. Clench my fist. Bailey Jiaoju raised his eyebrows and glanced at her movements. His slender fingers slightly opened her clothes and took out the secret book on chasing a wife with a smile that was not a smile. He said, "You've practiced well. It seems that you've finished reading the entire book." "I know a little bit of the essence." Hellion Vivian was very modest. Her identity was the arms tycoon. There was no need for her to learn, okay? She was born to be domineering and could give up. Belegaju smiled. His beautiful thin lips slightly pressed down. "Since it's like this, then let me see how good you are in that aspect." However, when he said this, he suddenly paused. The originally lazy and mischievous expression in his eyes suddenly became cold and indifferent. But for some reason, after the gentleness in his eyes faded, there was a faint platinum color. Hellion Vivian also raised her eyebrows. It was not because of anything else, but because at this time, Yuan Ming opened his mouth. "Woman, there seems to be some movement outside." Hellion Vivian also heard it, but it was not very clear. There should not be a lot of people. On the other hand, Bailey Jiaoju stood up and brushed his long robe with his fingers. Then, he threw out a chess piece from his fingertips. Pang! The soldiers who rushed in pointed their swords at him. Groups after groups of soldiers surrounded Belegaju in the center. Hellion Vivian narrowed her eyes dangerously. Her gaze was cold as she looked behind the group of soldiers. Her voice was cold. "Lord Zhong, what is the meaning of this? We are under orders to capture people. Lord Wei, it's best if you don't block us. Otherwise, you won't be able to afford the delay if we miss the time." The official surnamed Zhong pretended to be calm and said to the people on the left, "What are you all standing there for? Hurry up and capture this advisor who is misleading the public." Chapter 503. Deceiving People with Lies. Belegaju, who was dressed in a white robe, turned around. His voice was playful as he placed a chess piece on the chessboard. His movements were scholarly, but there was an indescribable evil in them. He stood under the brilliant moonlight. His handsome face was so beautiful that even the heavens and earth seemed to pale in comparison. "You want to arrest me just because of these 4 words?" Facing such a person, the soldiers didn't dare to step forward. Perhaps it was because the aura of a superior was too strong, making them feel as if he wasn't playing chess at all, but rather a game of chess. Under such circumstances, there shouldn't be many people who would think about playing chess. Why was this private advisor Long so special? The fierce battle in his eyes made them feel a chill on the back of their necks. Lord Zhong was also stunned by this scene. When he came back to his senses, the first thing he said was, "You can defend yourself, but that's a matter for later. Now, you'd better obediently surrender. Otherwise, don't blame this official for being impolite." You don't have to be impolite. Beligaju smiled at this moment. There was a hint of coldness in his evil smile. In an instant, that figure couldn't be clearer. It was so graceful. I'll surrender and go with you. For a moment, everyone doubted if there was something wrong with their ears. What was this private advisor long thinking? How could he let them take him away so easily without any resistance? Only you can bear the consequences. The last few words were so cold that the surroundings fell silent. Official Zhong was very disapproving. General Liao is right. A mere private advisor is so arrogant. Official Wei, you should take care of your subordinates. Helian Vivian didn't say anything. She only looked at Beligaju. Bailey Jiaju nodded his head slightly at her. Helian Wei finally opened her mouth, but her voice was colder than ever. Her gaze was like a knife pressing against the official surnamed Zhong's head, pausing after every word. Lord Zhong, you can arrest my advisor, but if anyone dares to use torture on him, I will make them regret being born into this world. Official Zhong had never felt like this before. It was like being stared at by a poisonous snake. His scalp was numb. He didn't waste any more time. He waved his hand and said, "Take him away." Helian Vivian clenched her hands and then slowly released them. She looked at the noble and flawless figure in the crowd and narrowed her eyes. Yuan Xiaoming, what do you think of His Highness' decision? He let himself be captured on purpose. Yuan Ming smiled evilly. Your man is getting more and more shameless. Unexpectedly, Helian Wei smiled, her thin lips curved up slightly. Shameless? Shameless, I think it's just. You should worry about yourself now. It is worse than being in the prison cell. Now, Liao is so unscrupulous in arresting people. He didn't even give a reason. I guess your identity as the magistrate is no longer useful. He is ready to do something at any time to make you step down. Yuan Ming understood human nature and was better at analyzing the situation. Helian Vivian lowered her eyes evilly and looked at the note that Beligaju left for her in her palm. I am afraid that he will do nothing. It will be boring. He even prepared a note for you. How big is that guy's plan? Little White's cold voice had a bit of admiration. He deserves to be a human who can control Fire Kailin. Yuan Ming's nose moved. Fire Kailin seems to be absent recently. But woman, don't worry. Those shadows around the third prince are enough to protect him. I know. Helian Vivian folded the note in her hand. She was not in a hurry and said slowly, wait until dawn. Clang. The iron door made a hollow and long sound. Someone came in and someone went out. The people who were released were none other than the father and son of the Liao family. Liao Qingtian was the one who personally came to release Bailey Jiaju. He stood outside the prison and looked at Bailey Jiaju, who was locked inside. He smiled and said, if I were you, I would submit to the circumstances. It's still not too late for you to speak now. As long as you reveal some dirty deeds of Wei, I will release you and guarantee that you will enjoy endless glory and wealth. Bailey Jiaju slowly raised his eyes, but didn't even look at him. His behavior was actually elegant and aloof. Liao Qingtian saw that he was so stubborn. He sneered. It seems like you still don't want to give up. Do you think Wei can save you? Save it. He can't even save himself. Why would he care about you? Your Lord Wei can't save you, but he can come in and accompany you in prison. Liao Qingtian glanced at the Yamen runner beside him. Keep an eye on him. If there is any problem, I will look for you first. General, don't worry. There won't be any problem, the Yamen runner answered without hesitation. Liao Qingtian was delighted. He turned around and said to Magistrate Liao, let's go. I will release you. All right, Magistrate Liao looked like a winner. He glanced at Beligaju and walked out of the prison cell. What did it mean when Magistrate Liao was released? It meant that the Liao family did not fall. The people who were enjoying the shade under the tree could continue to earn money and do business. Not only was Bayview Seafood Restaurant not closed, but the next day before dawn, they removed the notice issued by Helian Vivian and opened for business as usual. They even used it to welcome Magistrate Liao, who was released. Helene Vivian stood outside the door and looked at the restaurant owner with narrowed eyes. Do you know the consequences of removing the notice issued by the Yamen? This is against the law. Against the law? Ha 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 ha. The restaurant owner laughed out loud. Lord Wei, I have to say something disrespectful. In this provincial capital, the Liao family is the law. Surprisingly, Helene Vivian was not angry. She just stood there with a calm expression. The officials who came to attend the welcome banquet were very enthusiastic when they saw Helene Vivian. Hey, why is Lord Wei here? Let's go in and have a drink. Don't make fun of Lord Wei. Lord Wei is an honest official. How can he afford to eat seafood? Magistrate Liao, who was the host, walked out confidently. Those people quickly followed his words. Magistrate Liao is right. Look at me, I even forgot about this. Lord Wei, you can continue to stand at the door. We will go in first. Laughter was heard continuously. It was obvious that there was a hint of mockery in it. Magistrate Liao enjoyed the feeling of being superior at the moment. The resentment that was suppressed in his heart for the past few days was finally dispelled. Especially when he saw how lonely and helpless Lord Wei was, the smile on his face became wider. Lord Wei, I have told you not to be too arrogant. You didn't listen to me and kept making things difficult for me. Great, now I am released without charge, but your advisor is locked up in the dungeon. What is this called again? You brought this upon yourself. Chapter 504. As soon as he finished speaking, Magistrate Liao proudly led the officials into Bayview Seafood Restaurant. Helene Wei looked at his retreating figure, unhurriedly brushed her sleeves, lowered her head and smiled. Some people indeed brought evil upon themselves, but they couldn't live. And Ying. Helene Vivian raised her eyes and enunciated clearly, who entered Bayview Seafood Restaurant and participated in the Welcome Wind banquet this time? Did you remember them all? And Ying flashed and knelt respectfully on the ground. Lord Wei, I have remembered them all. The people who followed the royal family were indeed smart. Helene Vivian smiled. Send it to your master and tell him that I'll be waiting for him outside. Yes. Before An Ying left, he could not help but take a few more glances at Helene Vivian. In this world, other than young Master Lai, the princess was probably the only one who could have such a tacit understanding with His Highness. No matter what His Highness did, she could quickly understand and perfectly cooperate with him. It was a great fortune for the War Dragon Empire to have such a princess. The Welcome Wind banquet was still going on. The news that Magistrate Liao was released spread like wildfire. Governor Chen could not sit still after hearing the news. He immediately went to the Yamen with a deep sense of helplessness in his eyes. Princess, it's not easy to lock up Bayview Seafood Restaurant. We might get into trouble if we don't handle it well. Don't worry, Lord Chen. We don't know how things will turn out. Helene Vivian smiled lazily. Governor Chen was very worried. He stopped drinking his tea and said, the Princess Consort might not know about the origin of Bayview Seafood Restaurant, but His Highness is more familiar with the intricate and complicated relationships. He paused and looked around. Where's His Highness? Helene Vivian blew away the dust on the chessboard and put down the white chess piece in her hand. She said calmly, he was taken to the dungeon by Liao Qingtian's men. He should be resting with his eyes closed now. Crack. Governor Chen could not hold the teacup in his hand firmly. It fell to the ground and broke into 5 pieces. What are they trying to do? Are they trying to create a law? Don't blame Governor Chen for losing his cool. He was the governor of the provincial capital. If something happened to the royal family in the provincial capital, even if he had 9 lives, it wouldn't be enough. That was the future emperor of the War Dragon Empire. Were these people crazy? Even if they didn't know the identity of the royal family, they couldn't just randomly arrest people. Compared to Governor Chen's agitation, Helene Vivian was much calmer. Lord Chen, do you still remember what His Highness asked you? Governor Chen was stunned for a moment before he answered. His Highness asked me how he could punish a general who had military exploits but harmed his neighbors. He said that he needed to borrow the enemy's power to fight the enemy. Helene Vivian placed the last white stone in the center of the board and began a complete encirclement. It's not only Liao Qingtian who is taking advantage of the situation. Hellion Vivian smiled faintly. His Highness wants to pull out the entire string, so he took the initiative to go to prison. The word "took the initiative" made Governor Chen feel like he was enlightened by thunder. He was enlightened in an instant. If the emperor was arrested, Liao Qingtian would not be the only unlucky one. All the corrupt officials in the provincial capital who were involved in this matter would be affected as well. Even the elder in the capital city might be punished as well. Could this be the real purpose of the royal family? After all, if the incident was too small, the retired emperor would arrest a general who had military exploits just because of a restaurant that charged him unreasonably. This would definitely disappoint the other generals. If the incident was too big, it would be a crime of rebellion. That would be different. Governor Chen could not help but raise his head when he thought of this. There was a glimmer in his eyes that was originally gloomy. He was indeed the royal family. He had heard too much about this person's methods. After witnessing it for himself, he finally understood what it meant to be able to do whatever he wanted. Beligaju, this person was born to be an emperor who killed without staining his hands with blood. Hellion Vivian knew that he understood. She lowered her head and took a sip of tea, smiling widely. At that moment, Liao Qingtian was eating and drinking, carefree and unrestrained. Bayview Seafood Restaurant had reopened and earned a lot of money in just one day. He did not know that at this moment, an unexpected person had arrived in the provincial capital and was in the emperor's room in Bayview Seafood Restaurant. There were 5 to 6 guards with swords beside him. That kind of bearing was not something that an ordinary person could have. On the other hand, when Liao Wenwen found out that Hellion Vivian was so poor that she could not even enter Bayview Seafood Restaurant, she finally vented her anger. A country bumpkin will always be a country bumpkin. Now, even the private advisor beside her was arrested. She totally deserved it. "Miss, I heard that the old master is going to punish this Wei guy. He won't live for long." The servant girl was young, but her words were vicious. Liao Wenwen wanted to say something more, but a meat bun hit her face that she took care of carefully. Who is it?" Liao Wenwen was furious. She felt that her entire face was filled with the smell of the meat bun. She wanted to kill the person who threw the meat bun. The little one straightened the wooden stick in his hand and said majestically, "Me, you." Liao Wenwen did not expect that she would be bullied by a child. Whose child is this? How rude. The little one looked at her with a serious face and said coldly, "Shut up, ugly girl." Ugly girl? Liao Wenwen had always been proud of her beauty. Now that she heard this word, she was furious. "Stand still if you dare. Don't leave. Today, I'll let you, an impolite little bastard, know the consequences of offending me." Liao Wenwen. The little one felt that this person was very annoying. He did not plan to leave at all. He came out to pee and heard someone talking about his third brother and third sister-in-law. Of course, he would not let her go so easily. This ugly girl was always yelling. What was she yelling about? As a low-profile handsome man, Little Seven expressed that he really did not understand. Liao Qingtian was having his meal at the restaurant. Now that he heard the commotion, he came over with a few soldiers. When, what happened? "Father, this is the little bastard. He threw the meat bun at me and scolded me." Liao Wenwen pointed at the little one's bald head. She did not change her attitude just because the other party was a child. Liao Qingtian saw that the child was dressed like a monk and did not take him seriously. Where did this poor little brat come from? Perhaps it was because the commotion was too loud that it disturbed the people in the private room. When the little one saw that his grandfather appeared at the door, he did not talk back. His little face was puffed up and he was very unhappy. Liao Qingtian did not notice the presence of the retired emperor as his back was facing the father and daughter of the Liao family. Liao Wenwen was still yelling that she wanted to hang Little Seven up and give him a good beating. Meanwhile, Eunuch Sun was starting to get angry. Where did this crazy girl come from? How dare she bully their little highness? Chapter 505. Let's see who dares to lay a finger on the little master. Eunuch Sun's voice was sharp to begin with, hence it was extremely penetrating in the restaurant. Liao Qingtian looked towards the direction of the voice and his face turned pale instantly. Liao Qingtian had seen the Emperor Emeritus when he came to the provincial capital for an inspection 4 years ago. He was dumbfounded when he saw him again. The Emperor Emeritus. Why is he here? Looking at Liao Qingtian's expression, the little 7th prince knew that he knew the Emperor Emeritus. He turned around and said obediently, "Grandfather, they're going to beat me up." Grandfather? All of a sudden, Liao Qingtian froze as his eyes widened in disbelief. He had never expected the little monk in shabby clothes to be the 7th prince whom the Emperor Emeritus doted on the most. Then what he said just now. Cold sweat broke out on Liao Qingtian's forehead as he thought of this. Liao Wenwen didn't know anything and didn't figure out the situation. She said to Eunuch Sun in an arrogant manner, "Since you are here, apologize to me properly." She was still asking for an apology. Eunuch Sun was so angry that he put his hands on his waist. "Miss, forget about our little master doing nothing wrong. Even if he did, why are you being so unforgiving as an adult?" You. Liao Wenwen still wanted to say something. Liao Qingtian felt that his head was about to explode. He stopped her and smiled at Eunuch Sun. "It's a misunderstanding, it's all a misunderstanding." Misunderstanding? Eunuch Sun snorted. He did not believe that it was a misunderstanding. He had just heard the two of them wanting to hang his little master up and beat him up. Liao Qingtian wiped the sweat on his face with a handkerchief. "It's really a misunderstanding." As he spoke, he looked towards the stage that was filled with awe. The Emperor Emeritus's eyes were calm. He had never shown his emotions, and it was still the same at this moment. He said, "Little 7th, come here. Let's continue eating in the room." Then, he went back into the private room. The little one nodded vigorously. Then, he washed his hands and walked back to the door. Liao Qingtian knew that he had offended the retired emperor just now and could not enter the private room. He could only rub his hands and said to the little one, "Young Master Xiao Qi, I have never seen you before, so I have no sense of propriety in my words. My daughter is also the same. She does not have any other thoughts and her mind is slow. Please be magnanimous and forgive us father and daughter." "What's there to forgive?" The little one took a bite of the meat bun in his hand and said domineeringly, "Didn't she just want to compete with me in terms of dad? Then I'll compete with her. It's such a simple thing. She asked me to slap her in the face, so of course I'll slap her hard." This sentence made Liao Qingtian's old face turn red and white. He had long heard that the 7th prince was not only in the imperial palace, but also in the White Academy. He would bite anyone who provoked him to death. Sigh, how did his daughter provoke such a little demon? Liao Wenwen saw that her father's expression was not good, so she whispered, "Dad, isn't he just a businessman? Why are you so careful?" "You shut up." Liao Qingtian glared at her. He had spoiled his daughter to the point that she became so undisciplined and out of control. This time, he had really gotten himself into big trouble. "I'm just telling the truth. He's just a businessman, who does he think he is?" As soon as Liao Wenwen finished her words, the door of the private room was pushed open. The retired emperor took the lead and walked out. His steady voice revealed a strong sense of oppression. "I'm not talented. I've spent most of my life, but I only have a few subordinates. Compared to Miss Liao, I'm really not a big shot." Upon hearing this, Liao Qingtian's legs went soft and he almost knelt on the ground. In the past, he did not feel that there was anything wrong with spoiling his daughter. Now, the thing that he regretted the most was bringing his daughter out today. Slap. He could not let things go on like this anymore. Liao Qingtian gathered all his strength and slapped Liao Wenwen's face. The sound was so loud that almost the entire Bayview seafood restaurant could hear it. Liao Wenwen covered her face and widened her eyes in disbelief. "Father, you." Liao Qingtian did not have time to care about her. He nodded and bowed as he followed behind the retired emperor. "Emperor, old emperor, my daughter is not sensible and has not seen the world. It's my fault. I didn't educate her well. I'm guilty." The retired emperor did not even lift his eyelids, let alone respond to Liao Qingtian. Perhaps it was the effect of the slap, but Liao Wenwen finally realized that something was wrong when she looked at her father's humble appearance, which was different from before. Other than Elder Hellion, the only people who could be treated so respectfully by her father were high-ranking officials from the capital city. Could it be that the old man who spoke was the current prime minister? Liao Wenwen was stunned by her own guess. However, she did not know that the old man's background was much more powerful than the current prime minister. Liao Qingtian was walking behind the retired emperor and the rest. His short stature attracted many people's attention. After all, Liao Qingtian was a top-notch figure in the provincial capital. He was arrogant and domineering, no one dared to provoke him. Now, Liao Qingtian, who was always at the top, was following behind a little man who was dressed like a monk. His humble attitude made people wonder who the old man and the little man were. Liao Qingtian had never experienced such uneasiness. He could not enter the inn where the retired emperor was temporarily staying. He was worried that his head would be separated from his neck, so he dared not leave. He could only walk back and forth in front of the inn anxiously. He only woke up when the carriage from the capital city stopped in front of him. He looked at the person's face and complained tearfully, "Elder, what do you think I should do? Why is the retired emperor in the provincial capital all of a sudden? There was no sign at all. I've read the pigeon letter you sent to me." Elder Halien's tone was calm. "Don't worry, the retired emperor won't punish you for something you said. After all, you're a meritorious general. The retired emperor has to consider the feelings of the generals in the capital city. You don't have to be so paranoid. But, you're right about one thing." Liao Qingtian heaved a sigh of relief as he was hung up again. "What is it?" "The retired emperor won't come to the provincial capital for no reason. He must have heard about the Bayview seafood restaurant. Otherwise, he won't appear here at this time. Therefore, you must deal with this matter cleanly." Elder Halien's eyes flashed as he added, "Even if you have to silence them." Chapter 506. When he heard the words "kill them to silence them," a ray of light flashed across Liao Qingtian's eyes. Although there were many people who knew the inside story of Bayview Restaurant, none of them had any evidence. Wei was the only one who would not let go of this matter. Wei could not be killed. If he were to kill him now, he would be giving himself away. Moreover, he had an official position. Even though he was just an insignificant magistrate, since the retired emperor had come to the provincial capital, he would definitely meet the local magistrate. Therefore, he could only target those who had conflicts with Bayview Restaurant in the past. Liao Qingtian lowered his voice, "Elder, don't worry. I know what to do." Elder Hellion nodded and continued, "I heard that there's a strategist by Wei's side. He has been captured long ago. He won't leak any information." Liao Qingtian lowered his voice, "If he's still so stubborn before the court session, I'll get someone to get rid of him tonight." Elder Hellion retracted his gaze, "I'll leave these trivial matters to you. He's just an insignificant strategist, you can deal with him however you want. Now that the retired emperor has come to the provincial capital, it's not convenient for me to intervene in some matters. You can deal with those who have grievances against Bayview Restaurant all these years, especially those who have killed people. I'll still stand on your side during the court session. You can rest assured. All these years, the retired emperor has always had a good impression of Bayview Restaurant. He won't believe everything just because of the words of a mere magistrate. As long as nothing happens to Bayview Restaurant, everything will be fine." "Yes." Liao Qingtian lowered his eyes and watched Elder Hellion enter the inn respectfully. After a while, he turned around and instructed his trusted aide, Lord Zhong, "How's the Zhao family that caused a huge ruckus some time ago?" Lord Zhong was stunned for a moment before he replied, "It's all settled. The old lady refused to accept the money, so I hired a few people to destroy their house. It's very peaceful now. Go and deal with it." Liao Qingtian narrowed his eyes, "Since we've come this far, let's clean up the mess. What's the point of keeping an old lady alive?" Hearing his vicious words, Lord Zhong couldn't help but lower his voice. "This humble subject will go now. Don't let anyone see." Liao Qingtian did not know why, but ever since the appearance of the retired emperor, his heart had not been at ease. Lord Zhong lowered his eyes. "General Liao, don't worry. We are from the army. Killing people is a piece of cake. Go ahead, Liao Qingtian leaned against the carriage and closed his eyes slowly. I want to rest too. If it weren't for the tense situation, he wouldn't have asked Master Zhong to do such a thing in broad daylight. However, she was an old woman who lived in a dilapidated alley. As long as he blocked the entrance of the alley, no one would be able to see how he died. At noon, the sun shone down. The mercenary in black knelt down in front of Hellion Vivian. Young master, Liao Qingtian has used the assassination team of the city guards. Should we follow them? Of course. Hellion Vivian, who was dressed in white, smiled. Where is young Master He? Is he here? The mercenary nodded. Second young master has been with us all day. He even asked this subordinate why you called him over. Of course, there is a business to be done. Hellion Vivian played with the teacup in her hand. Tell young Master He to help me fight first. I will give him a restaurant later. The mercenary knew that the two masters had a good relationship, just like siblings. He nodded and left after receiving the order. Governor Chen was trembling with fear as he listened at the side. The young Master He that the Princess Consort mentioned, is he from the He family? Oh my God, how many big shots had come to the provincial capital that made people tremble with fear upon hearing their name. At this moment, Governor Chen still did not know that the retired emperor was here. If he knew, he would not be so surprised by the arrival of the He family's second young master. On the other side, Hellion Vivian took a sip of tea and said, "That's him. He has been locked up by old Master He for a long time. This time, he can't wait to come out." Governor Chen just listened and did not express his opinion. Everyone knew about the He family's influence in the military. They never got involved with any aristocratic families. There were not many people who could ask the He family's second young master, who was the most difficult to deal with, to come out. "Oh right, Lord Chen, do you have any useful people on your side?" "I don't need many, the people I brought can fight. You only need to send 2 or 3 people to give me a name." Hellion Vivian turned around and smiled with her eyes curved. Governor Chen did not understand, why does Princess Consort need people? Of course to be a hero and save the damsel in distress. How can I let my second brother fight alone? Hellion Vivian said casually. However, Governor Chen sensed something unusual in this. The provincial capital's situation was going to change completely. Who said that the situation was not going to change? Liao Qingtian tried his best to please the retired emperor, but he did not expect that the retired emperor would not see him at all. The retired emperor was puzzled about something else, so he sent a few shadow guards to deliver the news to that cold guy. Unexpectedly, none of them came back. However, the retired emperor had always been a person who could sit still. He had just arrived at the provincial capital, so he did not want to make a big fuss even though Liao Qingtian had recognized him. However, he did not dare to say anything as long as the retired emperor did not say anything. He could only wait for the trial to begin in the afternoon. At this point, Liao Qingtian was relieved. With the elder around, there was nothing to be afraid of. That guy with the surname Wei had no power or influence. Even his private advisor was locked up by him, so he could not do anything. After all, words were not reliable. Even if he mentioned Bayview Seafood Restaurant in the court, those who were involved in this incident would have either returned to other places or died long ago. He did not believe that the guy with the surname Wei had the ability to make a dead person talk. Liao Qingtian smiled happily when he thought of this. He temporarily put aside the matter of offending the little 7th prince. No matter how much the retired emperor doted on the 7th prince, he would not revoke his official position because of this incident. What he needed to do now was to watch the show and see how that guy with the surname Wei would dig his own grave. At this moment, Liao Qingtian did not know that he was the one who was digging his own grave. The battle in the deep alley had officially begun. The assassins who thought that they would be fine after dealing with the old lady glanced at the tall figure in front of them with hostility. "Didn't anyone tell you that no one is allowed to enter this alley? I advise you to move away." It was the first time that young Master He was threatened. He raised his eyebrows coldly. "What if I don't?" Looking at this cold and domineering man, the leader somehow felt fearful. However, they were from the army, so why would they be afraid of him? "You want to do this the hard way. Fight." Chapter 507. The leader gave an order, and a dozen soldiers with swords surrounded Haze. He didn't believe that this person could grow wings and fly away. The servant beside Hei's saw that the situation was not good and immediately said, "Do you have no respect for the law? Beating people in broad daylight, aren't you afraid that we will report it to the authorities?" "Report it to the authorities?" The leader laughed mockingly as if he had just heard a joke. "Let me tell you something today. Even if the provincial capital's magistrate comes, we can make him go back on his knees. Open your dog eyes wide and look at where we came from." Hei's temperament was that of a big boss who was immersed in power all year round. Now that he heard them, he laughed. "From the army?" Hearing that Hei's guessed his identity, the leader did not let him go. Instead, his expression changed and said in a low voice, "You know a lot, then I can't let you live." As he said, he waved one hand and mixed martial chi in his hand towards Hei's direction. What he did not expect was that the opponent had martial chi too, and it was even a gold-level martial chi. The leader looked at his fist that was blocked and narrowed his eyes. "Brothers, let's use martial chi and encircle him." In terms of martial chi, no matter how many people there were, they were no match for Hei's. Behind him was the old lady that he wanted to protect. If they used martial chi to kill, it would definitely hurt the old lady. What's worse was that this alley was too narrow. If they were not careful, they could destroy the houses next to them. The leader saw his misgivings and smiled coldly. "How dare you meddle in our Liao family army's business? I will let you die a good death today." When Hei's heard the 3 words Liao family army, he narrowed his eyes and knew that he was tricked by his sworn sister again. However, he did not expect that Liao Qingtian in the provincial capital would be so lawless. He shouted loudly, "Daju, go get reinforcement." "Young master, is this okay?" Daju was still hesitant. Before they left, Master had said that it was best not to use the army when young master was outside. Otherwise, they would be caught red-handed. Hei's kicked one of the assassins away as he tore off his collar and said, "Why not? Don't tell me you're going to let me be bullied like this. We're all righteous and brave." Yes. Daju's Qinggong was very good. It took him less than an incense stick's worth of time to go back and forth from the outside of the city. Haze pointed at those assassins, and his ruthlessness in the underworld was unmistakable. "Today, none of you can think of leaving." He had always wanted to protect someone. These bastards didn't even let an old woman go, and even scratched her face. It cut his face. Young Master He felt that as a handsome man who relied on his looks to make a living, having his face broken was the biggest insult to him. If he didn't get back at them, he wouldn't live up to his title as the #1 tyrant in the capital. "What? You say it again, who is being blocked?" When Jiang Liuyun, who was stationed around the provincial capital, heard the news, he sucked in a cold breath. Gongzi. Daju anxiously shook him twice. Liuyun immediately scolded, "Blind things. Who was Haze?" He was the successor appointed by Old Master He. Although he had always been in business, but he was someone who had been in the army since young. Go to the capital and ask around. No one dared to provoke this tyrant. Other than the few princes in the royal family, no one else dared to go head-to-head with him. Although the He family was no longer involved with those aristocratic families, the influence they had in the army was still there. Even until now, Old Master He could still cause a lot of influence with a stomp of his feet. Now, the most favored second young master of the He family was surrounded by a group of assassins who were trained in the army. This happened in the territory that he was in charge of. If something really happened, Old Master He would bring an army of thousands to slaughter him. When Jiang Liuyun thought of this, he didn't dare to delay any further. He brought 1,000 elites and directly killed his way into the provincial capital. As he walked, he was still thinking, "Second young master, please don't let anything happen to you." However, Liao Qingtian, who was clueless about everything, was ordering his subordinates to start fabricating evidence of Helion Vivian's corruption. He was planning to start the trial in the afternoon, so he was watching the show leisurely. Magistrate Liao listened to his deployment and gave him a thumbs up. "Big brother is still the best. You've been a civil official for too long. You don't understand that you have to be fast and accurate when dealing with people." Liao Qingtian held the Yixing clay teapot in his hand and looked around. Those few officials can't be saved. I've also offended the retired emperor, so it's not appropriate for me to speak. These people are gone, so be it. After this, you'll go to the capital directly. This provincial capital's mess, we'll hand it over to others. Magistrate Liao was worried, but big brother, you. Don't worry, I'm someone who has military exploits. The retired emperor won't casually deal with me. Moreover, we have Elder Helian's support. Liao Qingtian's eyes darkened as he said this. It's that Wei guy. If I don't get rid of him, I won't be satisfied. Magistrate Liao narrowed his eyes. A country bumpkin ruined our plan. We can't let him off easily. Let's hand it over to our subordinates, Liao Qingtian said casually. He can only wear that Dai Hua Ling hat until today. As they were talking, a Yamen runner came in to report that there were fighting sounds in the deep alley. Lord Wei wanted to take a look, but he could not find anyone to go with him. Liao Qingtian curled his lips into a smile when he heard that. This is the consequence of going against me. Tell the Yamen runners to stay put. If Lord Wei wants them to help with the case, they should find an excuse to do something else. Yes. The Yamen runner left after receiving the order. The smile on Liao Qingtian's face grew wider. He had said before that he would ask the assassination team to send him a signal after the mission was completed. The old lady must have been dealt with. By the time Wei rushed over, even her body would have turned cold. At most, he would only see a corpse. By then, the assassination team would have returned to the military camp. Unless Wei had extraordinary abilities, he would not know who killed the old lady even if he was there, let alone finding them. He was very confident in the assassination team that he had carefully cultivated. They would come and go like the wind, leaving no trace behind. Next, he would wait for Wei to slowly break down. After hearing the news that the Yamen runners were not willing to move, Governor Chen was so angry that he almost flipped the table. Helian Vivian, on the other hand, was calmer than before. Helian Vivian had expected that the Yamen runners would not move. However, she had to go through the process anyway. Now that the process was over, it was time for her to show her real strength and prepare to open the door. She had been holding it in for too long. Her hands were itching. Chapter 508. Brothers, it's time to go, Helian Vivian smiled evilly. In the blink of an eye, one figure after another appeared behind her. They were holding different weapons, but they were wearing the same black clothes. Some of them were carrying long spears, while others were holding hay in their mouths. From afar, one could almost smell the smell of gunpowder. Governor Chen did not expect to see such a scene. He widened his eyes in shock. Princess Consort, who are these people? The main thing was that he did not understand. Where were these people hiding just now? How did they suddenly appear? Also, the weapons in their hands. Why had he never seen those long black pipes before? My hidden army. Helian Vivian said the two words domineeringly. She was born to be a playboy, but because of one person, she restrained a little of her queen's arrogance. Now that her team was standing behind her, of course, she would be arrogant and wanton. Governor Chen was dumbfounded again. He stared blankly at Helian Vivian as she extended her right hand. Soon, an assault cannon was placed in her hand. She did not mind its weight. She skillfully carried it on her shoulder. Her long robe fluttered as she moved slightly. How could the word handsome describe her? Just as the leader of the assassination squad was looking at Hei's who was surrounded by them, he was completely unaware that they had already been surrounded by two groups of troops coming from the left and right. The hidden army's valiance was that they could kill their way to the scene in a short period of time. Helian Vivian looked at the chaos in the long alley, but she smiled carelessly. TSK, 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 what a lively fight. Hei's, who was enjoying the fight, wiped the bloodstains on his face with the back of his hand when he heard the sound. He smiled evilly. Finally, they appeared. The assassination army stopped what they were doing and turned around to look at Helian Vivian. The leader pointed at her with his long knife. Brat, I'm warning you, this is none of your business. You better scram back to where you came from. Second brother, you were beaten up by these guys, Grandpa Hay will be so sad if he hears about it. Hellion Vivian didn't take the other's threat seriously at all. She only teased the wound on Hei's face, but a trace of ruthlessness flashed through her eyes. Hei's casually knocked down an assassin. Panting slightly, he pointed behind him and said, "Look over there and see how many have fallen. You're still complaining that I'm not strong enough? I'm already exhausted." "More than 20. Hellion Vivian counted. "Not bad. All right, you rest for a while. Let me do it." Being ignored to this extent, the leader of the assassination squad was completely enraged. "What are you waiting for? Beat this little black face up for me." Hellion Vivian looked at the leader and smiled slowly. "I really hate it when people talk about my skin color. Besides, it's too noisy." As Hellion Vivian spoke, she lifted her arm and placed the impact cannon on her shoulder. Then, she pulled the trigger. A loud bang resounded. She knocked out 5 or 6 assassins who were charging at her. In the midst of the fire, she just slightly curved her lips. "At this speed, I can finish 20 soon." You. The leader looked at the impact cannon in Hellion Vivian's hand and his whole body was stunned. What the hell was that thing? He was also a person who had been on the battlefield, but how come he had never seen such a powerful weapon? Moreover, it could hit where she aimed. In just a moment, the leader's face turned pale. He hurriedly shouted to the back, "Retreat. Everyone retreat." Originally, he didn't bring many people. The rest of the soldiers followed him because he wanted to be able to have a good time in the city after killing the old woman. He didn't expect that they would be wiped out. "Want to escape?" Hellion Vivian smiled evilly. Da Xiong, Yunfeng, you guys block the left side. Hengtu, Li Yong, you guys block the right side. Teach this leader from the Liao army what it means to fight and beat people up. Yes. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Several continuous sounds were heard. When the leader turned around, there was already a man in black standing behind him. He grinned at him and punched him in the face. How could he be so fast? The leader opened his eyes wide in horror. Crack. The sound of broken bones was heard. The leader was in so much pain that he almost fainted. Hellion Wei wiped the bloodstains on her hands. "Don't kill them, we still need to keep them as evidence." After saying this, she walked to Zed's side. Hei's quickly pointed at his face and said, "Look at me. Is my face disfigured?" Hellion Vivian didn't say anything. She had to say something to the hidden army. Hit their faces. Take it as revenge for the second young master. Hei's. It was over. He, who was extraordinarily handsome, would never rely on his face to make a living in the future. "Do you know whose soldier I am? How can you treat me like this?" The leader stood up with a bloody nose and a swollen face. He resisted Da Xiong's attack with his fists. "I have achieved military exploits on the battlefield." Bang! Da Xiong didn't want to waste time with him. He lifted his leg and gave him a kick. He was very domineering. "You speak as if you have never achieved military exploits. You just wait and see. When General Liao comes, I will kill all of you." The leader was obviously used to being a tyrant and bullying the people. He liked to use Liao Qingtian whenever there was a problem. Hellion Vivian sneered. "I would like to see if Liao Qingtian dares to come. If he comes, I will blast him away. He hurt my second brother's face. I will make him pay with his life." Vivian, the second young master of the Hay family, was touched. It was so rare to hear her call him brother, but why did she always use the word second? Hellion Vivian turned around and patted his shoulder. She then smiled with squinted eyes. "This injury is not enough. Get some blood and splash it on your arm." As soon as this group of people appeared, Hazy already knew what Hellion Wei was planning. His purpose was very clear, which was to delay this group of assassins. When the time came, he'd play the trick of injuring himself to gain sympathy. His sister was a little playful. As her brother, of course he had to cooperate with her. "Indeed, I need to be seriously injured. Otherwise, how can I face General Jiang, who will be leading the army here later?" Hei's touched his chin evilly. Hellion Vivian only knew that he called the suppression army. As expected of the young master of the Hay family, He was more cunning than her. The brother and sister looked at each other. Helly and Vivian let out a long sigh. That Liao guy is so unlucky. He is blind. Who can he blame? He eyes sneered. No matter how he restrained himself, he couldn't hide the domineering aura of having the military power in his hands all year long. At this moment, Jiang Liuyun's 1,000 cavalrymen arrived. Looking from afar, it felt like an army was approaching. Mr. Zhong, who was guarding the alley, was completely dumbfounded when he saw this. What is this situation? You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.